Good morning, everybody. Hope you're having a good day. We're chilling today. We've got some good Spotify vibes going, um, and we're relaxing. It's gonna be a relaxed stream. We're going to, I got some YouTube rabbit holes this weekend, and I've decided I'm going to do some YouTube rabbit hole streaming today. So I've got a couple of videos lined up. I think that'll be fun to view. I watched one, and then I was like, I think I'm gonna watch that on stream because I'd be curious to react to it and see y'all's all opinion on it. But you know how we start the stream? We start all of our streams with the verse of the day. That's just a little bit of reflection time. So let me pull it up. Let's see here. This one's kind of good. See, I kind of go back and forth on the verse of the day between two different websites, primarily because I think sometimes you need to find what speaks best to you. So today's verse of the day is carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ, which I think like leaning into each other. And I don't know if this is what it says biblically, but this is how I interpret it for myself. Leaning into each other, making sure that you are, um, a good steward of your neighbor, of your wife, of your parents, of your children, of your brothers and sisters, and in doing so, it's easier to follow. Um, it's easier to follow. I don't want to say like a right path, but that's kind of how it comes across. Is like a, morally things. I feel like things would. And, well, I should also say, and yourself, like lean into yourself, make sure yourself is part of that, but not being too selfish. I don't know. I feel like you go down this path of we lose our morals, I think, in this world, and so I feel like going down a path of like carry each other's burdens, understanding where each other's at, helps you not disconnect from one human being another human. I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense. That's kind of how I'm interpreting it for this morning, though. Just kind of how I'm taking it. See, sometimes it doesn't have to make any sense, and that's how I feel like sometimes it's just reading it and moving on. That's kind of feel like today. The sense it makes to me is be a good neighbor. All right, we're already in for our first YouTube video. I'm gonna go ahead. I think I can leave this set in studio mode for OBS, but today I really want to watch. Let me go ahead and pause the music. I really want to watch this video. It's 16 minutes, and I found this channel. Let me show you the channel. There's only 4 videos on this channel, but I found this channel this weekend, sitting on my couch, hanging out with my puppy, and just needed some brain off time. And I don't know who they are, but I watched this The Evil Design of Auschwitz, and we can watch it again, but it wouldn't be like my first react to this. I really liked this video. It was a good storytelling video with some really good animations in there, but I really liked this video and I thought it was A plus. So today we're gonna do this Führer bunker one, talking about um, what the bunker looks like inside Hitler's final hours. I don't know, that's always intriguing to me. And I don't know if we'll go to the Bin Laden one next or if we'll go to the one about Pablo Escobar. But I don't know if you've seen Narcos, but I think that did a really good job on the prison one. So I think that might be fun to watch. All right, should we start it? Let me know how the audio is on your end.
This video has been sponsored and approved by Incogni. 30th of April, 1945. General Helmut Weitling stands at the entrance of the Führer bunker. In his hand is a message that can save thousands of lives. Before giving the message to Hitler, he must pass through 3 security checkpoints that turn away even the
3?
highest-ranking officials.
Wow.
Around him, Berlin is collapsing. Failure is not an option. Walking down the corridor, he sees the first guard checkpoint. He hands the soldier sitting at the desk his identification and says,
I'm General Helmut Weidling. I urgently need to see the Führer.
Weidling gets a nod of approval. The soldier gives a two-tap code, and the hermetic seal is broken. Weidling walks in. The easiest checkpoint is passed, but as he moves closer to Hitler, the security only grows stricter. General Weidling has just entered the first area known as the Vor Bunker. Before he can deliver the message, he'll have to pass by 2 more checkpoints. Underneath him is a floor that is 8.5 feet deep, made of concrete. Above him, the ceiling is 9 feet thick. Even though they might be protected from bombs,
Yeah, I was
it's
saying,
the
which
thought of
makes sense.
capture that creates intense fear and anxiety inside. The American and British forces are advancing rapidly through Western Germany, capturing critical major cities Munich, Nuremberg, and Hamburg. The Nazis' position is becoming weaker by the day.
So you
Oh,
want
of
to
course,
be a
there's an ad.
software engineer.
Hold on,
Go to
skip it in a second.
book.dev. Make a
See, here's the thing: is I thought about with ads. I thought about if I'm reacting to someone else's video, I need to have ads enabled because that's how they get money. So maybe I'll buy YouTube Premium though, so we don't run into that.
The first section of the Vor Bunker holds a huge air purification system running constantly, giving the underground city its breathing power and preventing gas attacks. The dining area lies along the corridor, right next to the kitchen, where meals are prepared for everyone, including Hitler's vegetarian dishes. Next is
Hitler was a vegetarian? That's like the first thing that comes up. No, there's no credible evidence to suggest that he was a vegetarian, although some sources have claimed that he followed a vegetarian diet. Historical accounts and medical records indicate that he consumed meat on occasion. For example, his personal chef reported that he enjoyed dishes such as liver dumplings and ham. I've never had liver dumplings. I don't know if I'd like that. I don't really know if I'd like that.
the storage and food pantry. With the city surrounded, Weidling knows the bunker's rations will soon be depleted. Down the hallway, he focuses on the
Well, yeah,
next
because you're thinking too, like it's gonna be completely depleted with all. You've got 3 checkpoints. How many other guards do you? How many men are you holding within this one bunker? And you're so yeah, it's like you're on a submarine with no way to refuel. You know, it's the same concept.
security checkpoint, the entrance to the Führer bunker where Hitler and his most important Nazis live. Here is Magda Goebbels' bedroom and lounge, where she and her 6 children live. This is Joseph Goebbels' family, the propaganda chief and one of Hitler's most trusted men, known to be one of the most violent anti-Semitic members of the party. Neighboring the Goebbels is the guard and guest quarters. This area slept Hitler's personal staff, including his 3 secretaries, military personnel, bodyguards, and temporary guests. Weidling is currently the head of the Berlin defense area, the last thing stopping the Soviets from completely taking over the city. Despite this high rank, he still might not get permission to pass this second checkpoint,
That's
I need
crazy.
to speak to the Führer.
says Weidling,
What's your business?
replies the guard.
That's crazy. What is?
It's from completely taking over the Berlin defense area, the last thing stopping the Soviets from completely
One more
taking
time, hold
of the temporary guests. Weidling is currently the head of the Berlin defense area, the last thing stopping the Soviets from completely taking over the city.
He's head of the last stand for the Soviets completely taking over Berlin, and he may not get in to see Hitler? That's crazy to me. Like it'd be one thing if this was that's crazy to me. It'd be one thing if this was during the war where you were the layers made sense, like the walls weren't closing in. But if the walls are closing in, I feel like you need to have a direct line of communication.
Despite this high rank, he still might not get permission to pass this second checkpoint,
I need to speak to the Führer.
says Weidling.
What's your business?
Replies the guard. Weidling looks at him sternly and says,
That's not for you to know.
the guard inspects his identification and picks up the phone. The Führer bunker is protected by a nearly 12-foot thick, steel-reinforced concrete ceiling. On top of that is a few feet
Makes
of
sense.
compacted earth.
In case they drop direct bombs.
Alongside this, to give the High Command more protection, the floor is 6.5 feet thick. And each room is protected by walls over 1 meter wide. This guard post
1
is
meter?
his only way
So
in
isn't a meter 3
or
feet?
out.
Your weapons, please.
Weidling hands the soldier at the door his pistol.
Go through.
Replies the guard at the desk. Weidling walks down the stairs. As he approaches the next door, Wilhelm Bergdorf comes out and asks Weidling what he needs that's so urgent. Weidling responds,
I need to speak to the Führer immediately.
The Führer cannot speak to you right now. I will relay the message.
This message is for me to give to the Führer. This city is in chaos. Let me through.
Bergdorf looks at him suspiciously. The soldiers grip their guns tighter. By this stage of the war, trust had nearly vanished.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Treachery was on the rise, and confidential information was being leaked to enemies daily. Something they could have avoided if they had Incogni. In the US alone,
What a
identity
good
theft
transition.
happens every 22 seconds, with each victim losing an average of $500.
What a good ad
Identity
transition.
thieves can open credit card accounts and take out loans in your name, with you having to face all the consequences. Every day, your personal information is being bought and sold by data brokers. Not just your name, but
What's
your
up,
home
Nidor?
address,
Welcome in.
browsing history. The amount of information they have on you is shocking. Fortunately, there is a solution. Incogni reaches out to data brokers who are selling your personal data and starts demanding that your information is taken off. If any of these third parties object, then Incogni repeatedly pushes them until all of your information is erased. First, create your account, grant access to work on your behalf, then sit back and watch from your dashboard as Incogni fights to remove your personal data from the internet. Take your personal data back with Incogni. Use code ATRIUM at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan.
Okay, I wanted to respect his advertisement because I'm reacting to this video he made. Am I gonna play Counter-Strike today? I don't know. Maybe towards the end of the stream, maybe not. I'm doing some React videos today because I kind of got down a rabbit hole. And this weekend I was hanging out with the puppy on the couch and I thought, well, let me just throw on some YouTube, decompress a little bit, and I got down this channel's I found this channel where they only have 4 videos, but look at the views: 2.6 million, 2.5 million, 4.6 million, and almost 700,000 on each of these views. And World War II always sparked my interest, and so I thought I'd watch some of these on stream today rather than just watching them solely and then react to it. So I don't know if I'll play CS today. Welcome in, Beho.
Weidling's letter could save thousands of lives, but he won't be let through this final checkpoint unless he can convince them of his urgency. A large airplane shell hits nearby, causing the bunker to shake and dust falls from the ceiling. Weidling.
I must deliver this message.
Bergdorf quickly grabs Weidling's arm and pulls him through the last security checkpoint. As Weidling enters the Führer bunker, the tensions grow stronger.
I never knew that the bunker was this big. I honestly never knew this. This is a massive bunker.
Even though he has managed to pass all 3 checkpoints, Hitler has executed officers for less extreme messages. Despite housing the most important Nazis, what you find inside the Führer bunker is far from what you might imagine. Meters of damp air and mold stand in the way of General Weidling and Hitler. The whole bunker was built underneath the water table, so generators in the room to his left work overtime to keep the lights on. To the right is the typewriter's room. Young women sit at their desks. Not even a week ago, they were transcribing orders and working diligently. But now, they sit idly. The men pierce their
That's
gaze
crazy.
up and see into the furthest room. A man begins walking towards them. Initially, this room was one of the
First off, this guy's animations, I don't know if he's making them himself or if he's just the spokesperson for the person making these animations. I don't know how they work, but phenomenal, I have to say. Absolutely phenomenal. Giving me like I feel like I'm invested the whole time in their animations.
staff bedrooms, but it's been taken over by the man approaching. Inside, there's a small single bed, desk, and closet. This man is Martin Bormann, Hitler's most trusted secretary. Bormann knows that Weidling and Bergdorf standing together is not good news. Huddled and speaking in low tones, Weidling explains the situation.
Well, nothing's good news then.
Bergdorf agrees to get Goebbels, and Bormann agrees to fetch Hitler. Then they will all meet in the map room, where Weidling will break the news. On the walls of this corridor hang
I'll check it
paintings
out after
espousing
this
the Nazi
video, Beho.
ideology that is crumbling outside. This large corridor serves two purposes. The top command rooms are connected to this space, which is where they gather and discuss strategy. It also serves as the waiting area for the more intimate conference area, the map room. Almost everyone, including Helmut Weidling, had witnessed Hitler full of rage, madness, and pity curse out high command.
This is your brain when you're struggling to focus. And this is your brain
I think I'm gonna buy
when you're
YouTube
in the
Premium.
zone.
Bergdorf knocks on the door to the right of the conference room. After a moment, he hears.
Komm herein.
He enters. This part of the Führer bunker serves several roles. The room is both Goebbels and the bunker's doctor's office. Inside, there's a small medical bed and cabinets with medicines and tools. There's also a desk where Goebbels works. The farthest back is Dr. Ludwig Stumpfeger's bedroom. He is Hitler's personal physician and surgeon. Inside, there's a small cramped bed and nightstand with a lamp. Next to it is Goebbels' personal bedroom. He switches between sleeping here and his family's room above in the Vor bunker. Bergdorf gets Goebbels' attention and tells him there's an emergency and that he needs to join them in the map room immediately. Opposite to Goebbels' office, across the corridor,
How long? There's an urgent message. We've been watching this video. It's a 16-minute video. 9 minutes in, they have done a tremendous job relaying the absolute hoops, as I understand it, the general coordinating the defense for Berlin from the Soviet initiative. It's taking him 3 layers of checkpoints, then through another general, then through a secretary, then through a conversation with a group of them, and now they just might be getting to the Führer. That's insane. Like I get it from I get the layers of government from that standpoint, but when you're in war and you are literally commanding the last line of defense, that's insane to me that you would need to go through all those hoops.
is Hitler's section of the bunker. The first room is Hitler's office. Inside, Bormann sees modest items and a small desk with a black phone. He walks into the next room. This is Hitler's lounge. It has a wide couch placed against the back wall. In the corner is an oxygen tank. He always kept one nearby because he feared suffocating.
Who
In
doesn't?
front is a small coffee table with papers and a thick red rug underneath. On the opposite wall is a small desk with some books and a large painting of Frederick the Great, Hitler's hero, hanging on the wall. Hitler shared this living space with Bondi, his German shepherd. To the left of this is his partner Eva Braun's room. Inside, there's a small bed, closet, and table. Hitler's room is not much different. It has a slightly larger table with 2 chairs, a small bed, some cabinets, and a picture of his mother, which he would take wherever he went.
I didn't know that about him.
The room also contains a large safe. Rather than expensive belongings, experts believe sensitive documents were locked inside, including Nazi dealings with foreign governments and highly classified intelligence. As it was lost to history, the truth will never be known.
Do you think that he was constantly carrying that? You know how right now we have like the nuclear football that gets carried with the United States president everywhere he goes. Do you think like they were constantly carrying this?
Orman tells Hitler that Weidling has an urgent message that they both need to attend to in the map
Different
room.
device, same concept.
Inside the small war room, the decorations are sparse. It has a cold metal table at its center and a large outdated map hanging on the wall. It shows the greatest extent of the now long gone Nazi Empire. Weidling takes out a map and extends it on the table. Whatever happens next is beyond his control. Not too long ago, Hitler experienced one of the darkest
Think about
moments
this. Think about this right here too. Like on the table. Think about how long it would take for someone to roll out a map, a current map, right? And then set up all the markers of where the push is coming in and where you are versus where they are, how delayed that information is, and then making strategic calls off of that versus now we're doing it in near real time. That's insane to me. Like it actually understates I think it's understated how tactically smart a lot of these generals and I mean a lot of these people were in terms of making these strategic decisions. Really, I do.
Not too long ago, Hitler experienced one of the darkest moments of his life. His second in command, Heinrich Himmler, the chief architect of the Holocaust, had gone behind his back and tried to negotiate a peace treaty with the Allies. Hitler found out
I
about
didn't know
the
that.
secret negotiation through a BBC radio report. Hitler raged at this betrayal and told those...
Is that true, or was that like a ill will planted seed by the Allies?
still with him in the bunker complex that Himmler's secret negotiations were the worst treachery he had ever known. Hitler ordered Himmler's arrest, and the people associated with the negotiations were to be shot on sight.
I mean, why?
Generate meeting notes with AI that gets your
That makes sense. I mean, doesn't that just make sense? Like, that makes complete sense. That's probably, I mean, that right there is the key indicator why it took a urgent message to get so far back to Hitler himself. 100%.
Weidling is deeply concerned about the punishment he might face, even though his circumstances are very different. A small crowd begins to gather, and the various members of the remaining high command are inspecting Weidling's map. Hitler walks into the room.
Please, at ease.
He says. Weidling's moment of truth arrives. He knows it can't possibly go well.
The Soviets are achieving consistent major breakthroughs. We have been pushed back hundreds of meters from all major directions. They are less than a kilometer away from the bunker. There is worse news, my Führer.
Weidling feels the room close in on him as he delivers the important message.
Berlin will run out of ammunition within the next 24 hours. We have only a small number of bullets. Airdrops are no longer reaching our defenses, and we have only a small amount of soldiers left.
Hitler does not interrupt him. He stares at the map.
My Führer, I suggest we try to escape this city. We have already lost 15,000 of our youngest soldiers.
Wow.
Hitler breaks his sentence.
That's what young people are for.
Weidling almost stutters. He goes for his trump card.
City. We have already lost 15,000 of our youngest soldiers.
Hitler breaks his sentence.
That's what young people are for.
That's not human. That's literally not human. No human makes a decision like that. Are you kidding me? That's insane. Like, I think people making those decisions, you're a robot. There's no way. Oh yeah, young people are for to die. That's insane.
Weidling almost stutters. He goes for his trump card.
I have already drafted an order. We can begin the escape immediately. All we need is your signature.
At this moment, Goebbels speaks up.
What you are suggesting is a fantasy. The Führer cannot simply run away.
Weidling's heart beats rapidly. Sweat forms on his forehead. Everyone in the room knows that the once almighty Führer is no longer the commander he once was. Within the last weeks, he has become delusional and refuses to believe that victory is not possible. He speaks one last time.
Gentlemen, we won't leave Berlin. Reach out to the generals outside the city. They will be able to deliver the decisive blow to the Soviets.
He stands up and exits the room. Weidling stands in silence. On April 30,
Wow.
1945,
How
Adolf Hitler
what
was found
delusion?
dead alongside Eva Braun, whom he married in the conference room less than 40 hours earlier. Heinz Linge, Hitler's valet, was the first to discover the scene. While looking for Hitler, he smelt gunpowder in the damp air outside his living quarters. However, he could not enter the room due to the door being locked. He immediately called for Bormann, and the two men kicked open the door and laid eyes upon the aftermath. Both bodies were taken to the Führerbunker's emergency exit, which led to the Reich Chancellery Garden above the bunker. Resources were so scarce that SS guards hastily buried Hitler's body in a shell crater and siphoned gasoline from abandoned cars nearby to burn the remains.
Wow.
Once the fire had died down, the leftovers were buried with mud and dirt to conceal them entirely. In the hours that followed, several high-ranking Nazi officials in the bunker also refused to surrender. This includes Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda, who manipulated the entire country, laid to rest his 6 innocent children before himself alongside his wife, Magda. General Weidling decided to surrender, hoping to save
Smart
the
man.
remaining lives under his command. On May 2nd, he ordered the last defenders of Berlin to lay down their arms. However, isolated groups of German troops without this knowledge continued to resist until the unconditional surrender on May 7th.
Well, that makes sense. It's not like they're getting direct line of communication anymore. You know, everything's so broken back then. Everything's so broken.
The structure that once housed Nazi Germany's high command was blown up by Soviet and later East German forces in the post-war years. However, because of its robust design, some of it still remains today, dismantled and abandoned.
Dismantled and abandoned, but honestly, in its height, like in its era, I would have loved to tour that thing. I think that would have been because the technological advancements, even the 1942, 1943? I can't remember the exact year that the war ended. I think he just said it. But or was it 1945? When did it? 1945, April 30th, 1945. Like you have to think this was constructed years in advance to the technological advancements for them to do that in the early 1900s. That's pretty impressive. I would have loved to see that.
The man responsible for the deaths of 6 million Jews, 2 million Poles, 3 million Soviet prisoners of war alongside the destruction of Europe
6 million, 2 million, 3 million. 11?
was unceremoniously
Wow.
buried in an unmarked grave that today is a parking lot.
Good. Happy ending. You know? That's a good ending. That's a phenomenal video. That's honestly a phenomenal video. This person, Atrium, definitely check them out. That is a phenomenal video. The storytelling is I think A plus. Like that's a podcast that I can that's a podcast I would listen to and an episode I would watch probably again. I'd probably go watch that again because I'm sure there's things I'd miss. That was a phenomenal video. I just think like I don't know. I always think back to World War II and you're always learning something new and I'm always shocked by how how far the Germans actually succeeded and then how rapidly they failed. Um, and no one, it always blows my mind at the thought that nobody challenged for succession. And I know that if they would have been shot on sight, but that no one kind of did that to Hitler. That's always been very. I've always wondered that or thought that, but it would be kind of like a sacrifice of yourself to do that, and then you necessarily wouldn't be the one taking over, be the third person who in line, right? You would need a scapegoat to do that. I don't. Very very good video. Very good video. All right. I saw this other one on. I like those two on World War II, so definitely check those out. Atrium. He has 4 videos a couple months ago and millions of views. Insane. Absolutely insane. And then there was a couple others. So we've got the real reason America's new Iron Dome terrifies the world, which is interesting. I know about is it the Iron Dome that Israel has too? And then when exploiting home buyers backfires, Zillow loses big. So any preferences on which one we watch next in the chat? If not, I'm just gonna pick one. Also, Beho told me to look up seen the bunker of Yugoslavia's leader Josip Tito. Um, Josip Tito uh bunker. Oh man, this is crazy. Look at this conference room. I wish I could see like an aerial view. It looks like it's built into the side of a mountain. Here, this is for you on YouTube. So you can see it a little bit better fitting on your screen and TikTok. Look at this. How many people could this fit? Construction of the bunker. I'm gonna botch this. Near Kochik, sometimes known as Arc D-O, had started back in 1953 and not finished before 1979, just 1 year prior to his death. It's remarkable that they succeeded to keep the construction as well as the existence of the bunker secret. This is a good spot to remark that the whole documentation to the bunker must stay secret until 2049. That is the reason nobody knows who was the architect of the bunker. Who are those 350 possible bunker inhabitants? Okay, 350 people. Look at this map. That's insane. Entrance to the bunker is camouflaged by a building that looks like an ordinary house. Genius. My problem is like, where did they hide the military vehicles when he pulled up to the bunker? Because if you go back up to the top here, looks like there's a side entrance here. So maybe they just dropped off leadership and then they went over to their own thing. Oh, this is the filtering system. Doesn't seem like a very big filtering system for a as massive bunker. Oh, this is the drinking water tank. Tank with the drinking water capacity of which is still unknown. Wow. As for electricity, the bunker had been fed from the public distribution network. In case of an outage, the plan B was a water power plant located on the Neretva River. Where is that? Maps. Interesting. I mean, that bunker could be anywhere through here. I don't know what the country lines are here. Oh yeah, the bunker could be anywhere through here. Fuel for electricity production, telecom exchange, It's so crazy to see how it's so crazy to me to see how all of these um I don't even know what the technical term is for them. Uh I'll just call them telecom hubs because I can't think of like basically network racks back then, right? It's crazy to think like I actually got to see inside of a latest telecommunications and um internet hub like for a city, and everything from uh uh oh my gosh, what is it called? Coax. Everything that was coax to everything that's now fiber. Think of it like think of it like let's see, coax server for city. Coax server for city images. Everything that they could do, like think of it, this is just like a home, someone's home server. But think of everything that they could do. Let me find a better picture for you on YouTube. Everything that they could do in this middle right here, think of it again like this is broader scale. They could do on one port of fiber. Isn't that insane? So when you go back and you look at this, you're like, it's crazy to see the truncation of all of the network and telecom that's happened over the years just because of the advancements we've made. I always love seeing this shit. Man, Siemens has been around for forever. Received messages had been decoded in the next room, full of fully functioning Siemens telewriters designed to send and receive teleprints. When did Siemens start? Um, automation company. Um, established year. Whoa, 1847. What was their first? What was their first? What was their first invention? Was the pointer telegraph? I know nothing about this. This is all brand new to me. I know nothing about this. A, the pointer telegraph was a significant early telegraph system developed by Werner von Siemens in 1847. It allowed for the transmission of messages by moving a pointer to letters, making an important step in developing the modern communication. That's cool. That's really cool. Bunk beds, meeting room with 60 seats. It's a pretty big bunker meeting room. That's pretty cool. That's a good recommendation to look up. That was really cool. Let's go watch this one. The real reason Americans knew Iron Dome terrifies the world.
Klaxons wail across a quiet neighborhood as a nearby fenced-off hill lined with barbed wire and armed guards suddenly erupts to life. The ground trembles and missile silo doors slide open, revealing 30-foot-long interceptors locked and loaded.
This is
Then
probably
a
in the
blast of
Midwest
fire
somewhere.
and thunder as the missiles scream into the sky, turning into fiery comets within seconds. Across the nation, in every major city, silo doors yawn open, unleashing dozens of interceptors.
Yeah, but the
in a desperate bid
majority
to
of
stop.
that we know of, the majority are in the U.S. I'm pretty, or in the central, like in the central. I'm pretty sure.
The incoming attack. The country is under siege, and the Iron Dome system is the only shield standing between survival and annihilation. But this isn't Israel. This is America. The
Yeah, see,
America
that's what I
of
thought. I
tomorrow.
thought it was Israeli's
Ask any
Iron Dome
military
too. I thought that's what it
historian
was
why
called.
The United States is a global superpower, and they'll point to two key advantages: resource independence and regional dominance. The U.S. is a leading oil and gas producer, the world's breadbasket, and home to vast reserves of coal, iron, and other critical materials for modern industry. And when additional resources are needed, they can be easily sourced from trusted neighbors like Canada and Mexico. Beyond its natural wealth, America has benefited from two powerful shields, the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. For over 2 centuries, these vast bodies of water have kept conflict
Yeah.
far from its shores. These oceans served as insurmountable
That's like the
barriers.
biggest reason why the United States hasn't been, and probably won't for a very long time, be invaded. I mean, one, you've got the First Amendment, which or excuse me, the Second Amendment, which that speaks for itself. And then two, you've got the massive amount of water that you would have to cross just to get to us. It's like I feel like the United States would just blow you out of the water, and then your reinforcements would be cooked.
Making a direct attack on the U.S. nearly impossible. This held true during both world wars.
Yeah.
While Europe was ravaged by destruction,
Biggest
American
world
industry
wars.
and economy surged,
Essentially
emerging
untouchable.
stronger after each conflict. As the Cold War began, the Soviet Union was still rebuilding from the devastation inflicted by the Nazis. Meanwhile,
I feel like
the U.S.
I feel like the biggest way the U.S. would ever fall has to be some type of infrastructure attack. 100%.
untouched by war, had a massive economic head start, one the Soviets would never overcome. Distance has long been America's greatest ally, shielding it from direct threats and allowing it to project power far beyond its
Yeah.
borders. This is why the U.S. maintains a global military presence, ensuring that potential conflicts are dealt with.
I mean, not only do you have to cross this big ass body of water here, and on the other side, don't forget the other side here, but it's like we're also guarding every pretty much entrance point that you're gonna go through.
before they reach American
Because
soil.
it doesn't show this too, but I think up here in Greenland, there's another base.
It's also why the U.S. has invested heavily in its vast network of allies, forging partnerships that have made it one of the most powerful nations in history. At its core, America's strength isn't just in its military or economy, it's in how many friends it has in its corner. But all of that is about to change, and America's traditional war-proof barriers are disappearing. In December of 2024, the U.S. Air Force delivered an unexpected gift to America, a sobering glimpse into the future of warfare. In a report simply titled, "The Department of the Air Force in 2050, the world woke up to a stark reality about the conflicts of the coming decades. While its purpose was to shape policy today and ensure the Air Force of tomorrow is ready for war, the report ultimately served as something else, a wake-up call to just how vulnerable the country will soon be to enemy attack. America's enemies are rapidly developing technologies that will put the homeland at risk for the first time in 2 centuries. The Air Force put it best themselves. In the future, nowhere will be safe from enemy attack, not even the homeland. This has ignited a major debate within the Department of Defense, how to protect the America of the future, and whether a missile defense system akin to an Iron Dome
I want to
is
know
the
how this
solution.
works. I think they're gonna get to it. Obviously, it's a 15-minute video, and we're only 3 minutes in. But America's so big. I mean, you're talking like every major city, right? This is gonna have to be in every major city. Because what's the travel time of a missile? I don't know.
But before understanding America's future missile shield, we need to understand the threat.
If you want to learn how to edit really well from professional Hollywood editors, we're going to show you the stuff that nobody else is teaching.
There's no clearer example of the growing threat than China's People's Liberation Army Rocket Force, or PLARF. Originally created to
PLARF?
manage China's nuclear arsenal,
That's
the
a
PLARF has
terrible
since
name.
expanded its role significantly.
Who's naming their ship Plarf?
Of the growing threat than China's People's Liberation Army Rocket Force, or PLARF. Originally created to manage China's nuclear arsenal, the PLARF has
That sounds
since
like a
expanded
meme.
its role significantly, far beyond what would typically justify an entire military branch. For comparison, in the United States, nuclear weapons are overseen by the National Nuclear Security Administration, NNSA, a government agency, not an independent military force. But the real mission of the PLARF has always been singular in focus, to keep the American Navy and Air Force far from the South Pacific. And not only did they succeed, but they may have completely rewritten America's strategy in the region. Established in 2015 as a replacement for the 2nd Artillery Corps, the PLARF immediately began developing and testing new anti-ship missiles. At first, these missiles had a range of just over 100 miles, enough to push back most of America's surface ships from Chinese shores. But there was one major exception: America's aircraft carriers. China closely studied both of America's wars against Iraq and learned a critical lesson: never let the U.S. build up its combat power in theater. They realized that the key to victory wasn't just about having a strong military. It was about denying the U.S. the ability to project its power in the first place. If they could keep American air power at bay and prevent U.S. forces from establishing a foothold, they could drastically shift the balance in any future conflict. To both ends, China began breakneck development on entirely new anti-ship and ballistic missiles. In just a matter of years, China had expanded the reach of its missile weapons from a few hundred miles to over 1,000. China's YJ-21, a hypersonic anti-ship missile, has a range of just shy of 1,000 miles. Named the Eagle Strike 21, it's designed specifically to eliminate American ships. With an even longer range, the DF-26 can reach out and hit targets over 3,100 miles away, putting traditionally safe American bastions of power, like Guam, well within range of Chinese weapons. And this is a wake-up call to anyone predicting future warfare in the year 2050. If missile development continues along the avenue it's currently on, it won't be long before conventionally armed missiles can accurately strike targets.
Yeah, but I don't think conventional warfare is. I mean, I know it's happening right now when you look at Russia and Ukraine, but I don't think that's going to be the route of China and the United States. I really don't. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not. I game on the side and watch this stuff to learn. But I don't. It doesn't make sense to my pin needle brain that that's the route they go, right? I think it's just more of like a we have this, we're strong and like it's just posturing.
Miles away, even all the way to the American homeland. America's invulnerability shield is about to be stripped away forever, so it's time to build a real one instead. Currently, the only threats that can realistically target the American homeland during war are nuclear weapons and perhaps a missile strike by a conventional guided missile submarine.
See, listen to how limited that is right here.
Instead, currently the only threats that can realistically target the American homeland during war are nuclear weapons and perhaps a missile strike by a conventional guided missile submarine. When it comes to nuclear weapons, the threat is nothing new. The U.S. has been under the shadow of nuclear annihilation since the early days of the Cold War.
Yeah, I mean, like, for the generals in the military, that's not like a new fear for them. It's still a fear. I think it's a fear for everybody, but that's not a new fear for them.
But in reality, no one is reckless enough to launch a direct nuclear strike on America. Mutually assured destruction guarantees it. The U.S. possesses enough nuclear firepower to ensure that any such attack would be the last move humanity ever makes. In the second case, it's not impossible that an enemy-guided missile submarine could get close enough to launch an attack against homeland targets. The U.S. converted a number of its own Ohio-class nuclear ballistic missile submarines to conventional missiles instead, effectively turning them into stealthy arsenal ships capable of firing as many as 154 Tomahawk cruisers.
Have you ever seen how these get loaded? By the way, have you ever watched a video about how these items get loaded into the submarine? They go from the hatch. They go from the top hatch and then we'll have to watch a video. It's actually crazy to watch. They go from the top hatch and then they lower them straight through, and it's almost like a diagonal 45-degree angle that goes all the way down to the missile base. It's actually it's very genius.
Cruise missiles.
But it blew my mind that's how they got loaded.
They can also hold 2 platoons of Special Operations Forces to deliver them rapidly and stealthily to a hostile coastline. Just one of these submarines has enough conventional firepower to cripple a small nation. However, such an enemy submarine would have a long stretch of ocean to cross undetected, and an attack would almost certainly be a one-way trip for the sub and
100%.
This makes it an unappealing option for an enemy, but soon they won't need a costly submarine.
The submarine would have to initiate the attack. At least in my mind, the submarine would have to initiate like a physical attack, and then you would have to have troops ready to land. How are you getting the troops there? Hold on one second. Sorry to say goodbye to my wife. How are you getting the troops there without getting seen? You can get the submarine there, and you can launch an attack. You may even get the submarine out. But how are you getting the troops there?
To American territory. China has already demonstrated intercontinental precision, conventional capability with its fractional orbital hypersonic vehicle test. This missile test sent a hypersonic vehicle which could be armed with either a conventional or nuclear warhead orbiting around the planet before re-entering the atmosphere to strike its target. Right now, such a weapon is far too expensive to be used for widespread conventional attacks. However, it is entirely possible that China would be willing to use one of these weapons against a high-value target, whether that's an aircraft carrier in port or the headquarters of a major U.S. defense contractor.
Hey, if you can conceal carry and you want to do so comfortably, you're probably going to be interested in this, the brand new Nimbus Gray Vanish.
But that's exactly the threat predicted by the U.S. Air Force. These weapons will only grow in capability and reach, while becoming cheaper and easier to produce and field. And it's not just China that's the problem. Russia will likely eventually...
But I still think that, again, I still think that that's like a showcase of strength. The real strength is going to be the brain attack, right? Like there's gonna it's gonna be I'm trying to picture this in my brain. You got two people at a bar and they're gonna go fight each other. And they don't actually, they're just posturing the whole time, but one looks stronger than the other. And one is like, I gotta hit the gym, right? Well, they can both get to be absolutely massive, roid up, whatever they need to do, but ultimately it's going to be the training that they do in the background, right? Like their mental training. If I'm going to do jujitsu, become a black belt, all these things, like these different styles of warfare that they can deploy. It's not going to be like the physical. I don't know if this is making sense or if I'm just thinking about it like an absolute moron, but like you're not going to just launch a missile at each other. America's just not going to do that to China, and China's just not going to do that to America. You have, like, what I'm getting to is you have to have some type of infrastructure attack, which means you're going to have a cyber, and that's what I was meaning by like the brain attack. Like you can posture as much as you want, but you're going to have to actually attack infrastructure.
Develop similar capabilities too. As the technology proliferates around the world, even smaller countries could begin to have access to conventional weapons with enough reach to target the American homeland. And then there's the other boogeyman in the room, the weaponization of space. Technically, placing weapons in space is against international agreements. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967
I wonder how many
was
are up
meant
there,
to
though.
prevent a space arms race before it could even begin. But the treaty has serious loopholes.
Yeah.
And then there's the fact that some nations simply don't care. Russia, for example, has routinely broken international agreements, violating multiple treaties just in the last decade.
Who's
In fact,
surprised?
intelligence suggests that Russia may already be in major violation of the Outer Space Treaty, potentially deploying a nuclear-powered anti-satellite weapon that's orbiting the Earth right now. The treaty does explicitly prohibit the development of weapons of mass destruction, both in orbit and on celestial bodies. This clause was meant to prevent the catastrophic escalation that would come from the US and the Soviet Union placing nuclear weapons directly over each other's homelands. This is what served as the basis for Ronald Reagan's famous Star Wars project, a missile shield that would keep America safe by intercepting nuclear weapons in orbit. The project was as controversial as it was ambitious. While discussed, nobody had actually tried to build a space-based defense shield for one simple reason. If it was successful, it would destabilize relations by upending nuclear detente. At that moment, peace between the US and the Soviet Union largely rested on the fact that each nation could wipe each other and the world off the map.
Yeah, I think we're already
The announcement
there.
of America's space shield ignited a new arms race with the Soviet Union. Fearing that the US might become immune to nuclear attack, the Soviets scrambled to build up a conventional military advantage to offset the shift in power. But this desperate military buildup came at a cost. With an economy already on the brink, the Soviet Union's massive defense spending spiral only accelerated its downfall, pushing the nation's overcooked economy into total collapse. In the end, Star Wars was more smoke and mirrors than a serious military effort. As every expert at the time
It
concluded,
wasn't a waste of time, bro. This wasn't a waste of time. This was genius. This is absolutely genius. You don't need to actually go build something. You just make it look like you're gonna go build that thing. You have your enemy allocate all their resources to it because they already have a crippling economy, and then you're just like, oh, I never actually did that thing. I'm just gonna, like, all I did was just waste your time while I went and did technological advancements somewhere else. Like, it's all smoke and mirrors.
the technology required
And they
was
fell
simply
for it.
too advanced. That is no longer the case. And the only way that America of 2050 can remain safe might be to build a real-life Star Wars missile shield today. While America's new missile shield is often compared to Israel's Iron Dome, the truth is it'll end up becoming something far more complicated and expensive than Israel's missile shield. There's a bit of a misnomer when it comes to Israel's Iron Dome, as people tend to refer to it to explain the overall missile shield that Israel enjoys, and recently demonstrated to be extremely
That's a
effective.
cool visual.
In reality, Iron Dome is only one small part of the overall shield, and the very last line of defense, in fact. The Iron Dome can only intercept rockets, artillery, drones, and missiles at a range of up to 43 miles. Before incoming enemy weapons get there, though, they have to pass through other layers of defense. The outermost layer is Israel's THAAD, or Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. Purchased from the US, THAAD is designed to knock out targets both inside and outside of the atmosphere.
Purchased
at
from the
ranges of
US.
Up to 124 miles. Arrow 2 and Arrow 3 knockout missiles flying through the upper atmosphere as high as 31 miles, while David's Sling can knock out ballistic missiles up to 186 miles away. Meanwhile, the Iron Dome is programmed to track incoming missiles and only fire interceptors if it detects the missiles will threaten built-up areas. How effective is Israel's missile shield? On October 1st, 2024, Iran launched 200 missiles at Israel. The only casualty Iran managed to inflict was against a Palestinian man on the ground who was struck by missile debris. Granted, Israel was being supplemented by the missile defense capabilities of allies, but that is the entire point of having friends in the first place. Likewise, America's missile shield will work a lot like Israel's, only on steroids. There are no official plans yet, but we can make some educated guesses about it.
There's no official plans yet? Come on. If Israel has this, and they got their equipment from the United States, like, you don't think the United States has already planned something like this or has something like this? Even if it's not public, like, I don't know if I believe that. Honestly, I really don't.
Its capabilities and design. Currently, the entire project is undergoing a 60-day review. After this, the Secretary of Defense will present a comprehensive plan outlining the requirements for...
Like, you're stating to your enemies, hey, we don't have this technological thing. I don't know. I just don't believe strategically it makes sense to state that. I don't think it makes sense to state that and then showcase where your weaknesses are.
Nationwide missile shield, the best deployment strategy, and the physical architecture of the system. While the specifics remain uncertain, one thing is clear: America is taking this threat seriously. The project has already come under some controversy, as it marks a major foreign policy shift for the United States. Up until now, the U.S. has sought to carefully balance its defense without upending nuclear detente, the tried and true means by which peace between major powers has been kept since the end of World War II. That's why the U.S. has only deployed small numbers of THAAD units. Each of these deployments has been met with wide protests by nations like China, who see it as directly undermining their capability to deter the U.S. via retaliation. This was the controversy surrounding the original Strategic Defense Initiative, and it remains the controversy of America's modern missile shield.
Wait, am I misunderstanding that? Am I misunderstanding that from the fact that they're upset that they can't retaliate? They're upset we can shoot three-pointers, but we can block them before they even get the ball out? Like, what?
Yet, as many have argued, missile defense is too vital to let Cold War-era nuclear norms stand in the way of its development. And those voices may be right. The weapons of tomorrow will have no problem crossing an ocean to get to U.S. factories, government buildings, and commercial centers.
Sure.
America's missile shield is expected to be made up of several key components.
What if I came into your video or creative business and handed you 15 new pre-sold clients who all signed a monthly?
The first will be the use of space-based interceptors. This is one of the most controversial aspects of the shield, as it'll mean putting some form of kinetic interceptor in space. The reason is simple: by putting interceptors in space, they can respond faster to an enemy missile attack and have a greater chance of knocking said missiles out. But the controversy comes from breaking the taboo of placing kinetic weapons in space. It could become a weapon of mass destruction if large enough and with no explosive payload. Originally called...
By the way, if you've not been to the Kennedy Center, it'll blow your mind. You gotta go.
If large enough and with no explosive payload. Originally called Rods from God, an old Cold War concept for a space-based kinetic weapon,
that thing's
involves
insane.
Putting telephone pole-sized tungsten rods into space and simply letting them free fall onto a target. These rods would strike with enough energy to mimic the blast of a small nuclear weapon. Next will be the development
Wow.
of a space-based sensor network. The US already has a global missile alerting network that's sensitive enough to detect even small anti-ship missile launches, but a future system will need to be both larger and more resilient. At the moment, all of America's
Well,
military...
that's just what happens. I mean, whatever's the advanced thing we launch in has been in planning for many of years. So by the time it gets launched and is successfully set up, they're on to the next one because it's going to take them 10, 15 years to successfully deploy it. So they're on to budgeting, planning, selling it, making sure everything's good. And while they're riding the wave of we have this defense mechanism, don't touch us, they're already on to the next one.
Space infrastructure is under threat from Chinese and Russian
And you just
anti-satellite
create
weapons,
layers.
and this threat is only expected to grow with time. A future missile defense network will need to move away from high-cost single-point failures and instead rely on swarms of lower-cost, less sophisticated assets. By networking these systems together into massive kill webs, the US can create a defense network that is too large and too decentralized for an enemy to effectively neutralize. Along with a new space-based sensor layer, the US will need communications infrastructure that is just as dispersed and just as reliant.
SpaceX
America's
question
future
mark?
missile shield can't even have one bad day on the job. To ensure that never happens, it has to ensure that the US can communicate quickly, securely, and reliably with forces around the world and in space. Once more, this will be about dispersing assets. That never happens, it has to ensure that the US can communicate quickly, securely, and reliably with forces around the world and in space.
That's happening already.
Once more, this will be about dispersing assets in orbit rather than relying on the traditional approach of
That's been
highly
happening for
capable
years.
but extremely expensive
But now
individual
at a very
satellites.
advanced
A
level.
new American space infrastructure will connect directly to assets on Earth and in space, making use of various platforms to intercept enemy missiles at different stages of flight. U.S. Navy ships are currently the backbone of American ballistic missile defense and will likely remain so due to their mobility. The future missile shield will be able to coordinate a response between Navy ships and Army Patriot batteries, along with as yet undeveloped interceptor technologies. And this brings us to the last component of America's missile shield: non-kinetic defense capabilities. A big problem with conventional missile defense is both the difficulty of intercept and the number of interceptors available. Typically, a U.S. warship will fire 2 interceptors at each incoming missile threat for safety. However, as enemy capabilities advance, the threat is no longer just individual missiles, it is swarms of missiles, drones, or even coordinated attacks using both. With the ability to overwhelm
Depends
defenses
on the
through
drone.
sheer numbers, it's becoming clear that conventional kinetic interceptors alone won't be enough to get the job done anymore. Especially not when the incoming threat may only cost a few $100,000 or even just a few thousand if it's a drone, and the intercepting missile has a price tag of over $1 million. This is why a big emphasis is being placed on the development of alternative non-kinetic means of destroying enemy missiles. This includes concepts such as directed energy weapons or lasers, which could be used both in the atmosphere and outside of it. Whatever form America's missile shield takes, one thing is clear: your neighborhood could end up looking like a war zone even if the actual fighting is taking place thousands of miles away. America's historical invulnerability will soon be a thing of the past, unless the U.S. takes steps to defend itself today. Do you think a nationwide missile
I
shield
don't
will
know.
make America safer, or could it trigger a new arms race? And how effective do you think it'll really be against modern threats?
I don't think it'll. I don't know. I don't have enough to say on it. I don't think it'll trigger a new arms race. I think it's just a version of posturing. Good video though. But it was a good video. Not my favorite. Okay, let's get off of the World War II and I mean, here's the thing: is I like learning about history. I like learning about what we're doing. It's not like a super big passion of mine. I just like learning about it. This is going to be interesting to me. The last video was just okay. Has a lot of views, but I just thought it was okay for me personally. When exploiting home buyers backfires, Zillow loses big.
In
Let's go.
2021, Zillow lost over $800 million. They laid off 25% of their staff, and their
Hold on.
stock crashed 87%, shedding over $43 billion in market cap. Yet, most of this was entirely self-inflicted. They poured billions of dollars into flipping houses, thinking they could become the ultimate flipper. They ended up spending money faster and faster and losing it all.
Yeah,
This
well, because they were going to people saying we'll buy your home for $50,000 more, $60,000 more, $100,000 more, trying to flip them. And so people were had $200,000 homes, $300,000 homes, getting these massive buyouts, and they're like, I have to take this. Which who wouldn't take that? If I bought a $200,000 home and I had been paying on it for 10 years, and I owe 150,000, and someone comes in and they say, "Hey, I'll give you 300,000 for it," like, yeah, I'm gonna take that deal. Especially when early on, when it hadn't inflated the market just yet, it was starting. Those people are, I don't want to say like lucky, but they cashed in at the right time.
is how Zillow made one of the biggest and strangest misplays in business history.
Scaling fast, chapter
Surprisingly,
1.
those losses all began with a very cautious, sensible approach. Zillow began dipping its toe into the house flipping business. If you're unfamiliar, house flipping is when you buy a house, make some renovations, and sell it for a profit. Zillow was already the go-to real estate platform to buy and sell homes with all kinds of data at their fingertips. So this seemed like the next logical step. Why not get into the action themselves? With that in mind, Zillow launched Zillow Offers in April 2018. You could go to Zillow.com, enter your property details, and Zillow's estimates will do an automatic evaluation. A pricing analyst checks it, makes slight adjustments, and within 48 hours, you'd have a cash offer. It was extremely fast, and Zillow handled most of the paperwork. It was incredible for homeowners because of how fast it was, since most people selling a home are also in the process of buying a new one.
Everything at
Well,
Rogers.
yes, but that's not necessarily true because they were just approaching people too. They were just approaching people, though, as I understand it, they were just approaching people and offering big lump sums of money for it. So I don't think that's necessarily that was happening, but I don't think that's the full story.
Began buying homes in Phoenix, but by the end of the year, it was operating in 5 metro areas and had purchased 686 homes, and the results were modest. Out of those 686 houses, they only sold 177. They made $52 million in revenue, but lost $27.2 million. Not great, but for a company the size of Zillow, it didn't hurt too much.
It's not gonna be like...
This was just the beginning. But then everything changed. Zillow began to scale Zillow Offers, and fast. In 2019, the co-founder and returning CEO Rich Barton set a bold new target: $20 billion in revenue in 3 to 5 years. How? By revolutionizing the real estate market through iBuying, or this new house flipping, aka Zillow Offers. They stated a new goal of house purchases per quarter, not 1,000 or 5,000, but 15,000 homes per quarter, or 60,000 houses every year. All of those to be renovated.
See, they made goals on, that's the issue. They made goals of how many homes to buy, and they had representatives to go in, and they, like, you had to meet your quotas. You had to spend, or you had to buy the amount of money. You had a budget you had to spend. And so they would go to people and be like, I need to buy a home. I can't find, all the homes getting eaten up. The market's getting higher and higher. They inflated the market themselves on themselves.
Then resold. This was a massive leap from under 700. That year, they expanded from 5 markets to 23, but things fell a bit short. That year, Zillow Offers purchased 6,512 homes in total, much lower than the target. Then in 2020, they purchased 4,162 homes. This was a problem because 15, they promised shareholders the high volume of houses,
half and then
which
a third,
was critical to scale
roughly
to $20 billion. How many they managed to sell, we'll get to that soon, but what's important here is that they were far below their goal. So Zillow made a few changes. To their goals? No, to the way they bought houses. They made some critical changes to make it easier to buy houses quicker. Changes that would have a profound impact, and not just on Zillow. To be fair, it did work. In 2021, Zillow acquired 3,805 houses in just the second quarter. Then the next quarter, over 9,600 houses. That was more than the previous 5 quarters combined.
Yeah.
They were getting very close to their goal. Things were working, but there's a looming question here. Why? Their first test was unprofitable, and they were going to increase from 600 purchases to 15,000.
When everything fails, just keep going. The Togi approach.
They scaled targets by 2,400%, or at least tried to. Why so big, so fast? Well, in 2019,
What did that say? Zillow Group CEO on Zillow's rolling. Okay.
Why so big, so fast? Well, in 2019, another company was making aggressive expansions, Opendoor. Opendoor was the pioneer
I've
in
never
the
heard of
iBuy
Opendoor.
model, and they were much more ahead than Zillow. Mid that year, they raised $1.3 billion in venture funding and held 70% of the market share.
What?
This was essentially market validation for Zillow that this was the right place to expand to. But there was something else. Opendoor wasn't alone. OfferPad, a similar company, was only founded a few years ago and was gaining momentum and had a 26% market share, while Zillow only
Are these companies even still around? Hold on. Hold on a second. Opendoor, the company. Yeah, it's still around. Kind of surprised, to be honest.
3%. They were far behind and were feeling heavy pressure to catch up. Hence that $20 billion revenue and a 15,000 houses goal in such a short amount of time. It was driven by the need to outmaneuver Opendoor. Zillow had to go bold and fast to claim the market before it was too late. Barton believed that this was the future and Zillow's big strategy to grow. But I think you can see where this is going.
I wonder what that project deadline was.
Me too. Blind Trust, Chapter 2.
In 2019, Zillow's market share jumped from 3% to 18%. But while their market share was growing, their house sales were not so good.
Is this market share in just US? I think so.
512 homes they bought in 2019.
Is that where
they only sold 4,313 homes. In that gigantic jump in 2021 at 9,680 houses in Q3 of 2021, they only sold 3,032. Something was very, very wrong.
Yeah.
Why was Zillow failing so spectacularly, and why were they selling even less homes in the year that they were buying more? Remember that critical change they made? Well, that was removing the people, the experts who would double check an offer.
What?
In the beginning, Zillow used their Zestimate system to value houses, but human analysts would always review and adjust it. But not anymore. They were putting blind faith into their algorithm and data to scale as fast as possible.
Oh my
This
gosh.
was full automation, which they called Project Catch-Up, as in catch up to Opendoor. Zillow essentially removed the quality control of their offers, which came with a huge problem. Houses aren't commodities, as
Yo, welcome in, Ath.
they aren't homogeneous. Houses in the same neighborhood, street, or even right next to each other can vary quite a bit due to a lot of factors. The view from the windows, lighting, and the floor plan, distance to shops, schools, parks, the street position, even just the general feel in a home all affect the price.
Yeah.
The algorithm couldn't take all that into account, but there's more. In order to scale faster, Zillow also tweaked the algorithm to offer more aggressive offers to win bidding wars.
Yep. This.
Zillow would often offer 10 to 20% above market value for houses.
Yeah.
Especially in hot markets like Phoenix and Atlanta.
And what are you gonna say? You're gonna say no to that? You're gonna say no. You're not gonna say no to that. If you're getting 10 to 15 to 20% above market rate for your house, even if I'm not going to, even if I'm not planning to move, and someone walks up and be like, "I'll give you what you paid plus 20%," I'm like, I'm really gonna consider that. It's gonna be hard not. It's gonna be hard to say no. Like there's things I love my house right now, but there's things that I wish I had. If someone comes up and says, "Oh, I'll give you 20% above rate for your house," and I can go, since this is my first home, I can go buy a new home and check off those things that I wanted. Like who's gonna say no to that? Nobody. My origin, I'm from the United States, Central U.S.
10 to 20% extra on house prices is often more than $100,000. And remember, Zillow was buying thousands of houses every month. Zillow offers also caused another unique issue which made things worse. Remember, Zillow isn't just an iBuyer. They're a gigantic marketplace where thousands of people list information and data on homes which are bought and sold. Zillow uses all that data for Zillow offers, but what happens when the company begins overpaying for thousands of homes? With them overpaying with aggressive offers, the algorithm believed this meant the market was growing and should offer even
It fed itself. It fed itself incorrect information. 100%.
higher prices. It created a feedback loop, a compounding effect. The National Bureau of Economic Research found
it's
that
like someone just creating a story in their own head and driving that narrative. The Zillow algorithm just did that to itself. That's 100% what it did.
the sizable
You're totally opposite. What do you mean, Nath?
effects in this algorithmic feedback
Let me go
loop,
back.
a Bureau of Economic Research found that the sizable effects in this algorithmic feedback loop raise a concern that the Zestimate algorithm has the potential to ingest market disturbance at any stage of the sales cycle and propagate it over time and across properties. Yet, somehow, it gets even worse. This algorithm was just part of the equation. Something else was happening which took things from bad to worse.
I have one serious question for
Guess your country? Hold on, let me mute this ad and let it play. You want me to guess your country? Let's see. You said you're opposite, so you're somewhere in Germany. I don't know. That general region. India maybe.
Worse.
Okay, hold on. I missed this part. Let me go back.
Something else was happening which took things from bad to worse.
Which one? Germany or India? Because I guessed two. India? Ah, see, I've got a good guesser. I know, baby. I know. Okay, let's go back. Sorry.
Somehow, it gets even worse. This algorithm was just part of the equation. Something else was happening which took things from bad to worse.
Chapter 3, Bad Place,
Zillow's
Bad
algorithm
Time.
was bad, but what made things even worse was the housing market. After interest rates were cut to zero in 2020, the housing market went into overdrive. More buyers, higher prices, everything seemed to be going in the right direction for Zillow, so they poured more money into buying houses. The plan was to buy high and sell even higher, but as we know, that's not what happened, and part of that is what happened in the market. For the first half of 2021, the housing market was booming. According to housing studies at Harvard University, the change in prices was up 12%.
Wow.
With inventories at record lows, existing home prices continued to head up. Zillow was expecting things to continue growing in 2021, but that didn't happen. Instead, the US housing market began to cool. There were fewer and fewer buyers who could afford these ridiculous prices, which slowed down sales.
Yeah, when I went to buy my house, I bought it in 2023. When I went to buy my house, not 1 month after I put the offer down, the interest rates went up a full percent or 1.5%, and I wouldn't have been able to afford it. Like, comfortably. I could have afforded it, but like comfortably within my budget. In Brock's brain, my brain, I would not have been able to afford that. I would not have liked that. And the price had shifted in a 6-month time period. The price had shifted 40,000. It actually dropped and was creeping back up over a 6-month time period. This absolutely makes sense. What genre of streamer am I? I'm kind of multi. I would say my genre is I do a lot of Counter-Strike and PUBG. I also do just a hair amount of sim racing. I have my own sim racer, and then I'm doing some React videos right now, just as a chill Monday.
This in Zillow's 2021 data. They bought way more houses, yet somehow sold even less.
Whoa.
They bought way
686 houses, and they sold 117. They sold 17% of their portfolio. 177. 25%.
Even less. To make things worse, mortgage rates
Oh, thanks, Ath. I appreciate it. Hopefully you're enjoying the content.
started increasing, which
I only started like a month and a half ago, and if you want, you can follow me on Twitch. I only need 5 more Twitch viewers or followers, excuse me, and then I can get to that 50 mark. And I've got 150 YouTube subs, and I'm streaming on all three, Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok.
made owning a house even more expensive. Buying a house
Sorry for the
became
cough.
even less appealing.
Let me go back. I missed that.
2021 data.
Okay, so
They bought way
25%
more
they sold their
houses,
portfolio.
yet somehow sold even less. To make things worse, mortgage rates started increasing, which made owning a house even more
This is
expensive.
exactly what I just said.
Buying a house became even less appealing.
This is exactly what I just said. Look. This is exactly what I just said. Look at this time frame right here. And these are percentages, right? So in February of 2023, Zillow's 12 months for this is not mortgage percentages, but let's just take it from a mortgage percentage perspective. I bought my house at 5.35%, and it was actually listed at 6% for the interest rate. And the company I bought it through did a 1% buyback. And then the next month it went to 7.5%. 1 month. So like Zillow was essentially inflating the market, pricing people out of being able to buy it.
Prices began to fall, but Zillow had already overpaid for so many houses. So they began listing homes for below what they paid. 66% of them with an average discount of 4.5%.
It's like buying something on, like I did this the other day. I bought a Elgato capture card on Facebook, and I've decided I'm not gonna do a dual stream PC. I think what I'm gonna do is just buy a better graphics card and kind of uplift from that perspective, and then I can kind of keep my office as is. I'm gonna talk about that a little bit later, but I'm gonna now resell that capture card. It's essentially what Zillow did is the stupid tax. Like I didn't plan myself enough ahead of time or do enough research or really come to my own conclusion, so I jumped the gun, and then now I'm like, well, if I can make money on it, maybe, but it's a used capture card that I bought. My intent wasn't to flip it, and I may lose money on it. Plus, I had to drive an hour and a half round trip, right? Like so overall, I'm gonna be losing money on it. The Zillow just did a very, 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 very expensive stupid tax.
This is where
But here's the thing, history repeats itself.
Everything went wrong. In 2021, Zillow offers lost the company $880
look at that.
million.
That's an $881 million stupid tax. In was that 2021 alone?
2021,
yep.
Zillow offers lost the company
$1
million. Even after profits from Zillow's internet media business, at the end of 2021, Zillow had a net loss of $528 million.
Insane.
Not to mention the thousands of houses that they were now bag holding with all kinds of ongoing expenses. Zillow offers was a sinkhole of capital. The reality is that house flipping requires a lot of cash and it typically has low margins. In a shareholder letter dated November 2nd, 2021, Rich Barton announced that the company was closing the Zillow Offers business and laying off about 25% of its workforce. He mentioned a few reasons for this, but there was one which was very clear. He said, "We have been unable to forecast future home prices at different times. This home price forecasting volatility has also contributed to significant capacity and demand planning challenges, exacerbated by a difficult labor and supply chain environment."
This is just corporate speak for we fucked up. We've been unable to forecast future home prices at different times. Well, yeah, because the situation you created for yourself made it unpredictable. At this home price forecasting volatility that we created has also contributed to significant capacity and demand planning challenges that we created, exacerbated by a difficult labor and supply chain environment that we created. They just forgot to add that to they just forgot to add that comma, we created comma, to every part of that statement.
The gamble had failed, and now Zillow was paying the price. Their competitors had experienced the exact same thing. OfferPad saw a boom of revenue through 2022, but by 2024, it had dropped to under $1 billion. The same thing happened to Opendoor, whose revenue had fallen by 2/3 over the same time span.
Yeah.
Most of the revenue was gone in just 2 years. House flipping wasn't dead, but the iBuying version of it at scale certainly was. Zillow went all in, and instead of looking for profits, just tried to become the biggest and the fastest.
Yeah.
Instead,
Zillow was going for market share. Zillow just saw that we own 3% of the market share. I think that's what they said earlier in the video. And these other companies have 70%. Like, we want that. We want people to know our name. But they paid the stupid tax and result.
Biggest loser. Zillow had made the wrong move.
I will say though, like when I go to look for homes, the first app I pull up is Zillow. I don't like using other apps. Like they created a very good experience. I wasn't like a buy-in individual. Like they didn't have to like buy me in. They just created a very good experience.
In the wrong place at the wrong time. But I don't think anyone was really sad about this, because this was just another instance of corporate greed entering the housing market, and this time it backfired.
Yeah, it's gonna take...
Alright, real talk. Since 2017, we've dropped over 1,050 videos and racked up 150 million views. That's
good for them.
ESPN level numbers. Yet somehow we still haven't reached 1 million subscribers. If you've been watching without subscribing all this time,
I got you.
What are you doing, man?
Big sub.
Hit that subscribe button right now so that we can finally make 1 million a reality. But until then,
y'all gotta check this channel out.
And I'll see you guys on the next one.
Ooh, we're watching this one. Hold on. We're watching Carvana next. Are you kidding me? I have 2 notes on that. First off, logically answered this YouTube channel. So you can all see it on when you're on YouTube. You can just take the app and open it up and go subscribe to these people. That was a very good video. We will watch more of these videos. I already subbed. It should update here. And then you've got AMD's AI disaster. Oh, this is the content rabbit hole we want right here. I'm so excited for the Carvana one. But back to Zillow. I mean, they just made it themselves. Yeah. Like right here, this is exactly what I said at the very, very start of the video. I had a client sell a home to Zillow, and then they bought their same home back for 40 grand less about 5 months later. So they just get an apartment, wait for the home that they wanted to get online, and they're like, oh, I didn't find anything, so I'm going to go back and just buy the house that I loved already, and I made 40 grand. Genius. Companies are no longer happy to make money on a consistent basis. They now have to grow and grow to make shareholders happy. It's true. Yep, it's about shareholder satisfaction, 100%. I don't think this is why America keeps failing. I disagree with... it's not about consumer happiness. It's about shareholder satisfaction. I agree with that. This is why American keeps failing. I disagree with that. A lot of shareholders are consumer individuals, but there's just more shareholders that hold more of the portfolio that, like, I genuinely think that they have, this is still the people saying, this is still the people speaking. Oh, sorry. It's about shareholder satisfaction. This is still the people speaking. It's just a different subset of people. But I don't agree with the second part. I'm an appraiser and Zillow estimator. I'm an appraiser and Zestimate is a disaster because everyone expects at least Zestimate when they are far from what it's really worth. Well, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand that one on first read, so I'm just going to go next. A house next to me in Phoenix was purchased for $250,000 in 2015. Zillow bought it for $750,000 in 2021, and it sold for $450,000 in 2023. Perfect comment right there. Imagine you combine this comment right here. What up, Fredo? Imagine you combine this comment. Home was purchased for $250,000 in 2015. Zillow bought it for $750,000 in 2021 and sold it for $450,000 in 2023. With this client up here, or with this comment up here. I had a client sell a home to Zillow and then bought it back for 40 grand less about 5 months later. Imagine you're that person right here. Imagine you just pocketed 300K, 500K. No, it'd be 300. Excuse me, 300K. in 5 years because you were just like, I'm gonna go buy my old home back. Actually, it looks like one of those rare instances where companies did not exploit people, either sellers or buyers. They bought high from sellers, benefiting sellers, and sold low to buyers, benefiting buyers. They, of course, tried to profit, but ended up not really harming anyone. It's kind of refreshing, actually. This is a base take. I really like that. That's a straight up base take. 100%. That's true. I mean, it's a dumb business strategy, but this guy's true. That's exactly right. Should really be an antitrust issue to be selling houses on the same app that is setting prices for everything. That's a solid point. Now, I agree with this one. Corporations should not be allowed to purchase single family homes, 100%. 100%. Especially corporations from overseas. Absolutely. Zillow's first online showed the people's property as not good or undervalued it. Then, after Zillow buys it, same house with any renovation, they price it 30% higher. I feel like this is what they reply back. LOL, scammer's gonna scam. I feel like this is true and untrue. Per the comments at the top, I feel like this is true and untrue. There's actually nothing I've seen. There's no comments related to Zillow's first online show the people's property as not good or undervalued it, because I don't know. Well, I can actually see that. If you're going on Zillow and you trust Zillow to see what your property value is, it's kind of on you though as the home buyer to know what you paid for it and whether you should or shouldn't sell. I mean, that's just kind of baseline knowledge, I feel like. Yo, what up, Z? I can do it, little bro. Zillow's offering above market rates for my units in my condo building. They bought a unit for $335K, which sold a year later for $295K 6 months. Wish I had taken their offer. Yeah, just buy it back for 40 grand. You just pocketed 40K. Do some renos in your place, and then you buy it back for 40K. You do renos in your own home. Okay, here's something. Well, as a person who invests into property, I have to say this. Zillow's actions help fuel the inflation prices. I look like I'm at work selling life insurance, bro. Yeah, actually, I have this new portfolio for you. If you could just take a look and buy from me, that'd be fantastic. Sign right here if you can, plus 15% tip, please. Okay, let me read this one. Well, as a person who invests into property, I have to say this. Zillow's actions help fuel the inflationary prices that are still here today. 100% true. 100% true. They were and still are one of the problems. Okay, they were and still are one of the problems with the housing industry of today. Their mindset changed the mindset of housing buy it to the mindset of greed. That's not true. I don't agree with this part. Their mindset changed the mindset of house buying to the mindset of greed. This has always been a thing, just by individuals. They just changed it to a corporation level. So I don't think that this is 100% correct. 40 years I've been doing this to show you one thing, but I saw another which hurt millions of people. Okay, am I just misunderstanding this, or this guy just typed this very poorly? I wouldn't buy a house from him anyways. New rule: if your company can afford to buy thousands of houses, you'll be taxed to help pay for housing for all those who've been displaced or priced out of the market. You do understand that the main problem is zoning laws, right? Yeah. Okay. No. As a data analyst, this is the classic example of thinking that data on a spreadsheet can give you a nice, neat answer and help you beat the market. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yo, Austin, I'm pinning your comment, bro. I love that shit. Here's one that's got 42. A simple thing that would have saved the company. Just rent those houses with 20% less renting cost than the market. This is actually a genius idea. With this, all the houses would have been rented. Company could have made a profit, and it would have given them enough time to sell the houses back and break even. Yeah, exactly. They should have just looked at it like They honestly just should have just looked at it like the S&P long term. This is genius, actually. Depends how much liquidity they had. Uh, the rent income may not surpass the interest payment, short-term depreciation they had over the income. Yeah, but they lost almost $1 billion in 1 year. So to be able to supplement that, I mean, I don't know how that part of the company works, but to be able to supplement that, I feel like makes sense. Even if you're running a negative, you're not running as big of a negative, and you can hopefully just hold on to that negative for a couple of years and start to recoup. All right, that was a good video. I already liked it. Definitely, when exploiting home buyers backfires, Zillow loses big. Big wrecks on that video. 100%. Let's just watch a couple ads for them so they can get their revenue. That was really good. I really like that one. All right, next one we're going to do Carvana's 79 billion used car. I can't read the rest of the tab, but that's the one we're going to do. Ooh. Okay, hold on. We're going to go mute this one in the background. Let's skip the ad first. If it's a good video, we'll make sure to watch the ads at the end. I want to make sure these people get paid. Like, we're reacting to this, but we're reacting to this, but I want to make sure that they get paid. 100%. That's the goal. I want to get paid eventually. They want to get paid. That's the whole goal, bro. Okay. So first take, Carvana's $79 billion used car disaster. What happened? So the first time I saw a Carvana, we'll call it a Carvana vending machine, I was in Texas driving through, and I remember going down the Sam Rayburn Tollway in North Texas, going south, and I looked to my right, which would have been west, and I'm like, what is that? Why is there like 10 stories of cars in I can't remember if it's rotating or not, but in this like glass box. And I looked up what Carvana was, and the first thing I thought was, that is stupid. Like, that is, who is going to a vending machine to buy their car? Honestly, that's the first thing I thought. Straight up. All right, let's read this description. Over the past decade, Carvana has become the king of used online car sales. Considering that the company was launched by veterans of the I was actually starting to feel bad when it said considering that the company was launched by veterans, and then I read launched by veterans of the used car industry. Now I feel less bad, or I don't feel bad at all. They're creators of Drive Time. This is not too surprising. However, what is surprising is the amount of volatility and suspicious activity associated with the company, from allegations of stolen cars and invalid licenses to mountains of debt and huge losses. Carvana is the epitome of a controversial company. In fact, due to all the controversy, the stock just recently fell 98%. What? Carvana stock price today. They fell 98%, max. What is it? 2021 was at $360 down to $8, and then they rebounded. Look at that though. When was this video made? This video was made this year, and look at their stock price. They must be doing something right. It does kind of look volatile through here though. I mean, look at this. You're at February 2025, 285 to March 190 to 327. Must have had a good Q1 or something. It's pretty interesting. This video tells the crazy story of the rise, fall, and rise again. Oh yeah, that's what we just saw, of Carvana, and explores the allegations and controversy surrounding the company. Okay, one thing I wanted to touch on, from allegations of stolen cars and invalid licenses. Have you seen the videos of people stealing cars and then reselling them in other countries? Like, there's a whole secondary market for it. It's so interesting. Honestly, it's so interesting. They get loaded onto container ships, and then they get sent over to other countries. It's actually, and then they get bought from there. And people still drive around with the license plates on from like California, New York, like all these things in these other countries. It's actually very, very interesting. All right, let's watch these ads quick. Get them their money. I'll eat my brownie. Actually very interesting. We're learning Chat, we're learning on this channel. We play games, but honestly, this is fun to just chill and learn. All right, just making sure they get paid. We'll run it. Skip this one. Okay, hold on. We get a good volume level. Carvana, here we go, baby.
One of the wildest journeys in business. Even if you don't know the name, you've probably seen this. The car vending.
Yeah, this is the first thing I saw. Right here in Texas, down the SRT. That was the first thing I saw right there. I was like, what is that?
Machine. Yet, what's even stranger is the company's journey. The business exploded with a surging share price and was one of the youngest companies in the Fortune 500.
That's
Then
crazy.
It crashed 98%.
We just looked
and
at that.
Almost went bankrupt. But now it's back again. What's going on with this car company? Well, there's a lot behind it.
I think they shifted their model. I don't know anything about this. I'm just guessing. I think they shifted their model. I think the vending machine concept is just a marketing thing at this point, and I think that they just do like buy sell. I don't know if it's auction style types, but I've actually seen a Carvana lot, and it kind of looks like they're just bringing cars in and going. Like they just their model now isn't these vending machines. That's the advertisement, and they have a website. You buy it on the website, and then they just deliver the car to you. That's what it seems like.
The scenes.
Or you can pick it up at like a
Carvana
local
is
site,
hiding drama.
similar to CarMax, like a similar approach but just different.
On top of drama.
That's
This
my guess.
is one of the wildest business stories you'll ever hear.
I'm excited. Chapter 1, a Fortune 500 car dealership? Question mark.
Firstly, what the heck even is Carvana? Why the gigantic vending machine? Ironically, the reality is nowhere near as exciting. They're a used car dealership, an online one. The 8-story vending machine is essentially a massive gimmick. You could buy a used car online without coming to one of these. But when you picked it up, if you wanted, you placed a giant coin into a slot and watched the automated machine pull down your car and present it to you. To be fair, Carvana understands it's a gimmick, but that's the point. Co-founder Ryan Keaton explained, "You're driving along the highway and all of a sudden you see this giant stack of cars encased in glass."
Literally what I just said. That literally happened to me.
That tends to stay with people.
Yeah.
And Ryan was definitely right.
He's dead on.
Carvana quickly began to grow and expand. In 2016,
Dax and whatever her name is.
$370 million
Kristen Bell?
in revenue.
Kristen Bell? Something
But
like that.
By 2019, that was almost $4
What if your website
10 is that 10x?
limited by one single thing? Privacy regulations. Enter
billion. That's on top of the $300 million they raised in funding before going public in 2017. That year, the co-founders were all listed in the Fortune 40 under 40, Ryan Keaton, Ben Huston, and Ernie Garcia III. Remember that last name because it will become important later.
Ernie
Carvana
Garcia
was growing and
III.
expanding, with the founders calling it the Amazon of cars. They opened more
But now,
locations
isn't Amazon doing cars?
in Orlando, Florida, Ontario, California, and many more. Of course, all of them had the iconic vending machine. But no ordinary car dealership could have climbed as high as Carvana even with such a big gimmick. In truth, Carvana had something else. Something very
It just... Okay. Two thoughts. I don't love going to a dealership, and I don't love going to a dealership and talking to sales reps. I don't love that. And I'm not trying to offend anyone here. I don't love that. I'll be honest with you. But what is the term for what's the term for fear of empty spaces? Yeah, kenophobia. Hold on. Kenophobia is defined as an intense fear of empty spaces or voids. It's a type of specific phobia where individuals experience significant distress and anxiety in situations involving emptiness or large empty spaces. This can manifest as a fear of open, empty rooms, large empty buildings, or even a vast of emptiness. When I look at this area in the background, when I look at that in the background, in the back left of the car, I'm gonna put my mouse over here so you can see it on YouTube. I get that feeling. I feel like there needs to be a person here. There needs to be a person standing right here, like smiling. You got, wow, congratulations, you just got a new car. I don't even care if it's a like a video board with like a telecommed human in there on Zoom. I don't care. I feel like there needs to be something right here because I get kenophobia looking at this.
Very different to other dealerships, and it wasn't just the vending machine. In 2017, after Carvana went public on the NYSE, they made an important acquisition, Car360 for $22 million, which used machine learning and augmented reality to view cars in 3D.
That's cool.
Which was originally backed
Show me the engine bay.
Carvana's biggest selling point, aside from the vending machine, was the online purchase experience. They were one of the first to enter the digital-first car dealership space. And now, they were pushing that even further, which was extremely lucky or visionary given what was right around the corner.
We have a new name for the coronavirus. The World Health Organization has officially called it COVID-19.
The pandemic was a terrible time for many, but for Carvana, it was the best possible scenario that could have ever happened.
Makes sense.
The supply of cars coming into the country was disrupted, so the price of used cars...
Used cars? I drive a truck. I bought my truck in 2019. It's a 2016 model. When I bought it, it had 50,000 miles on it, so it was over on its mileage. It was, because I think you're supposed to drive like, what is the average? Average miles driven per year. Average miles driven here is 13,000 to 14,000 miles per year. This one had 50,000 over 3 years, which was 16,000. 16.6 repeating. So it was over by a couple thousand miles. And I actually was like, you know what? Not that big of a deal. It's got every bell and whistle that I want. It's like a dream vehicle for me. And so, no big deal. I was working super close to the office. It was maybe like a 5-minute drive to and from. So it wasn't a problem. And then, so I bought that 2016 model in 2019, 50,000 miles, every bell and whistle you can think of for 35,000. Okay? At a 4% interest rate. A couple years later, I could have sold it for 40,000. I think it was like 42,000. And made money on the vehicle after driving it. And remember, it's over on miles, simply just because of the rate. Now, it's 2025. It's a 9-year-old vehicle. 16,000 times 9, excuse me. It's 9 years old. It has 104, we'll say 105 just to round it out, divided by 9 is 11,000 on average miles a year. I don't drive it very much. So like I still are like daily family car, but I don't drive it very much. And so it's now under on miles. So but it's just crazy to think like that it's so true when you look at the rate during COVID. This everything they're saying is 100% right.
Dramatically. Their vast inventory of cars suddenly got a lot more valuable with
Yeah.
a lot more buyers.
100%. It was genius.
I bought our car from Carvana.
Yeah, man.
It was so easy. I found the perfect car. Under budget, too.
Carvana already had the best digital car buying process with a full 3D view and all kinds of financing options. And in the pandemic, they realized this was their golden ticket. With people stuck at home, this was by far the best way to buy a new car. You could examine it down to the finest detail.
Yeah.
So they pushed it even further by offering touchless car delivery.
That's why we've become the nation's
I think they still do that.
retailer. Because our customers love it.
I see these trucks around. I think they still do that.
They promoted phrases like shop from your sofa, though it got even better. During the pandemic, the Fed dropped interest rates from 1.75% to 1.25%,
imagine.
then just 2 weeks later, all the way down to 0% to 0.25%. This was great for Carvana because financing cars just got a lot cheaper. One of Carvana's other big selling points was financing options for bad credit buyers. Monthly payments on car loans dropped, even for those with bad credit. Most companies avoid financing options for those with bad credit since it can provide too much risk if a customer defaults. With near zero
Yeah.
interest rates, though, that didn't matter nearly as much. Borrowing money was very,
It was,
very cheap.
yeah, it was a
Low
cheap time to borrow money. I think it was said like 2010 to 2020 or 2012 to 2022 was like the best time to ever borrow money because of the cheap rates.
interest loans meant
And now
Carvana
it's
could
balancing
borrow
out.
from
I don't know if
banks
that's
while
completely
taking
correct
on
or not,
lower
but that's what
risk.
I'm pretty
Carvana
sure.
would finance cars for low credit buyers, then bundle these loans together and sell them to investors. And the pandemic put all of this into overdrive. From 5.5 billion in revenue in 2020 to over double at 12.8 billion the following year. But this wouldn't last forever. Things were about to change, and dramatically.
Let the ad play. I'll give him the full 15 seconds. Let the ad play. And then I'll unmute and go back. This is a good video. We're going to make sure they get paid. This is a good video.
Carvana's stock price began to
Chapter
fall,
2, a
and
deserved fail.
quickly.
Ooh, a
From
deserved fail.
337 in July 2021.
Let's go back. Hold on, I was talking.
Carvana's stock price began to fall, and quickly. From 337 in July 2021 all the way to just $4.70 in December the following year. A 98% drop.
The
What
following
happened?
year.
Well, it's actually quite simple. The insane rush of demand and the high prices for used cars began to wane. Used cars began to drop in price as the world opened up.
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve also began raising interest rates to as high as 5.25%.
Yeah.
Meaning there was less demand and financing cars got a lot more expensive. To make matters worse, Carvana had taken in massive amounts of used cars to keep up with the high demand. Their massive inventory suddenly got a lot less valuable after they just paid a premium for it. This was bad news for Carvana, but part of this was also self-inflicted. Those perfect conditions of the pandemic didn't last.
Okay. I want to go back and then touch on this because I want to... Hold on.
Their massive inventory in cars got a lot more expensive. To make matters worse, Carvana had taken in massive amounts of used cars to keep up with the high demand. Their massive inventory suddenly got a lot less valuable after they just paid a premium for it. This was
Okay.
bad.
I interpreted that wrong. I was going to say their inventory. I thought it was people. I thought it was saying that people were getting upside down on their loans, which they do. I just have thoughts on that, but that's not what they're saying, so.
News for Carvana, but part of this was also self-inflicted. Those perfect conditions of the pandemic didn't last forever.
Right.
But Carvana acted like they would. They made a massive bet on growth in a time when the industry did the opposite. They had just purchased a
I don't get that. I don't get that. Like you see that COVID is not a long-term thing. It feels like a long-term thing when we're in it and we went through it, but I don't get why you double down, triple down during that market. Like, to me, it sounds like you're on something and you're just like, I gotta get my refix. You know, that doesn't make sense to me. I feel like you need to make your company stable during that, like capitalize and then stabilize. But that's where the shareholder piece from the last video comes in. You know, you have to show growth, and if you don't continue to show growth, then questions of leadership, things like that come into play. So I get it. It's just, I don't know, stabilize is the smart play.
America's second largest wholesale auto auction chain for $2.2 billion.
Well, and it started off, it says in the description. It says in the description that considering that the company was launched by veterans of the used car industry, like you would think that they would see this. I don't know.
Cash. To make matters worse, while Carvana had impressive revenue growth, they weren't profitable this whole time, and when they were
Makes
closest
sense.
to breaking
A lot of
even,
companies aren't.
They burned $2 billion on this acquisition, meaning this wasn't really a cash deal. They financed the cash through debt, which they were now drowning in. Yet somehow something even worse was happening. Under the guise of easy buying, Carvana was.
But maybe that's what they thought. Is maybe they thought we're gonna finance when we're up high and the value's big through debt. We'll be able to acquire, get a bigger market share. We understand that the value is gonna drop, and but we'll be able to live through that and come out on the other end. And to be honest, like, look, they are. So I'm not like recanting what I said earlier. Maybe that was just their way of, maybe that's just like business smart decision that they chose in way of stabilizing in the long run. I'd be curious as to where this goes in like a year, 2 years, where this is at. So I don't know.
Hiding a nightmare.
A month after, it was like a nightmare.
First, she says there were mechanical problems.
Yeah.
The shocks were bad, and then
Yeah, I'm not surprised by this. People are buying on Carvana. Like, when you go to a dealership to buy a car, you can either, one, ask that dealer to do a full review of the car for you, a full report, and give it to you. Or you can also ask them if you want to go to, like, hey, I want to take this car to another dealer. I want to have them do a review, and then I want to bring the notes back and see what they say. If they say no, don't work with that dealer. The only exception that I will make to this note is that I've bought a car from CarMax. And when I bought my vehicle from CarMax, I was like, well, these things have issues, and it was my running boards, because they're automated on my truck that go up and down. They weren't working properly. There was scratches all over the rims. The lane departure system was like airing out, and one other thing. And the saleswoman was like, no, they're fine. And I was like, I don't get what you're saying. And she goes, CarMax has a 90-day policy that if you find it, that they will review and fix it. So I noted that in the 90-day policy, and then they replaced the motors in my running boards. So I got brand new motors in my running boards on my truck that was 3 years old. I got all new rims that were no longer had scratches or anything in them. They took it to Ford and they fixed. They did an update internally to the software, so that fixed my blind spot monitoring. And then there was one other thing that I can't think of right now, but they did too. It's like if you add that up, even the rims themselves are going to be $2,000. If you add all that up, the motors I think are $500 each, so that's $3,000. Probably plus the time put in is $4,000. Like you probably save $3 to $4 or $5,000. So that's my only exception is like I feel like with CarMax they give you that 90-day like policy at the back end, but you should take a new car and have a mechanic look at it. And that was one of my biggest concerns with Carvana is it's like if you're buying it at a vending machine, I don't know how you test drive it or not. Like I haven't gone through that process, but I assume they've got some method, or take it to a mechanic to look at it.
Tires had to be replaced after a month.
Then the temporary tags Carvana provided expired, and she says she was unable to register her car. A big problem since she worked as an Uber driver.
This wasn't an isolated case either. Customers noticed all kinds of problems with cars after buying from Carvana.
My car kept overheating, telling me to pull over.
Yet, this wasn't even the big problem. That was the license plates and registration, which Carvana often just forgot to do.
Yikes. This is why I don't like escrow right here. I have to do it, but this is why I don't like escrow. Because it's like someone else is managing my shit.
When buying a used car, it usually has to be registered and is given a...
I think the problem from I paused it earlier and then I played it without making any commentary. I think the problem is people don't have other people check their vehicle. They just blindly trust.
When buying a used car, it usually has to be registered and is given a new license plate. But after buying from Carvana, some customers had to wait months or even up to a year just to get a permanent license plate. Carvana just kept giving customers temporary tags, sometimes from different states. This didn't help when some cars were previously stolen vehicles, which caused even more issues for customers. If you have a tag from the wrong state, you run the risk of getting pulled over and sometimes even arrested.
For $26,000, I got 3 temporary license plates. My husband went to jail. We both lost our job. My credit was ruined. And
that'd be a lawsuit.
Customers were going...
That's got to be an active lawsuit, right? That's crazy.
Through hell, and it was all allegedly Carvana's fault.
That one story alone?
State, you run the risk of getting pulled over and sometimes even arrested.
For $26,000, I got 3 temporary license plates. My husband went to jail. We both lost our job. My credit was ruined, and I still don't even have a car.
I will never buy from Carvana from that story alone. Ever. Like that's word of mouth right there.
Customers
I don't even know those people. But I don't want that happening to me. I don't want that happening to my wife. Like, I'm not jeopardizing our future or our path for a car.
going through hell, and it was all allegedly Carvana's fault.
And I'm not saying that that's like I'm not saying that they're at fault or anything. I want to clarify that. I'm saying like their story is their story should be heard because that's terrible.
Suits and penalties began to pile up from all over the United States. Carvana paid out millions in settlements to states, and others like Illinois and Michigan even suspended Carvana's license to operate.
Good.
Customer trust was at an all-time low, and revenue began to fall with the share price. Carvana's story could have ended right there, yet it somehow didn't. Against all odds, the company came back from oblivion, though maybe it wasn't for the best.
Ooh, is this we're gonna talk about? Remember at the beginning they talked about that third guy's name, something the third. Maybe they're gonna talk about that. I'm gonna give them the full video, the full ad watch. This is a really good video. I like this channel. Y'all should really subscribe to them. I like that. Oh, I almost clicked skip after I said I was gonna watch the full ad. All right, I can skip this part now. Chapter 3, A Strange Comeback.
If Carvana wanted to weather the storm, they needed to take a drastic action. So, what did they do? Well, first, they needed to deal with their mountain of debt, which had climbed to an unbelievable $8.9 billion. In July 2023, Carvana made an agreement with almost all its debtors to eliminate over $1 billion in outstanding debt. But the problem with debt isn't that you have to pay it back, but that you have to keep paying interest until you pay it back.
Right.
That's why the deal also lowered Carvana's interest expenses by over $430 million.
They had a car loan on their car loans.
For 2 years. The noose around
What did that say?
interest expenses by over $430 million for 2 years. The noose around Carvana began to loosen, so they continued. They announced sweeping cost cutting, including massive layoffs, dropping annual expenses by over $1 billion. Then, it happened. Carvana announced their very first profit, $810 million for 2023,
wow,
and over $1 billion for 2024. This was enough to win back investor confidence. They already had revenue, customers, and a massive brand presence. The only thing that was missing was profit, and now they had that too.
Yeah.
Sure, there were ongoing lawsuits and complaints, but if you're profitable, that's just a cost of doing business. As such, the share price began to skyrocket. Carvana's stock came back strong, up 2,000% over 2 years.
That's crazy.
That's unbelievable. On the surface, it looks like they got their act together, thought long term, and turned the business around. But there was something sinister going on behind the scenes. Remember Ernie Garcia III?
We were just talking about him.
He's Carvana's CEO, but he's also in business with his father, Ernest Garcia II, a billionaire and a felon. He pled guilty to bank fraud in 1990, and he's currently a major shareholder of Carvana along with his son. And things get even more interesting when we look at their stock history. Between 2020 and 2021, in the height of Carvana's growth, both Ernest Garcia II and his son sold $3.6 billion of Carvana stock. Next, in July 2023, when the share price was at its lowest, Garcia III bought back $126 million. Then, the very next day, Carvana announced the best quarter in company.
Yikes. Yikes. Against this backdrop, with the stock price depressed, the Garcias signed an agreement to purchase $126 million in Carvana stock on July 17th, 2023. What up, gamer? 2 days later, Carvana announced the best quarter in company history, featuring a massive earnings beat from re-accelerated loan sales, as well as the successful restructuring of debt. They were up $427 million. Wow, that's crazy. What's new, man? We're just trying some React videos on this channel. I wasn't feeling like gaming today, and I saw some of these videos about World War II over the weekend, and I was like, ooh, that's really interesting to me. So then I found this channel called Logically Answered, and I always find this stuff really, really interesting. So I'm going through and just watching some of that stuff. I think it'd be good content for the channel too. Help grow. I think on this stream alone, we've already gotten +4 subs. That's pretty good for a small streamer.
History. Then, when it began to climb for a second time, Ernest Garcia II sold an additional $1.4
Wow.
billion in Carvana stock. I don't know about you, but this allegedly looks an awful lot like insider trading, and
Little bit of
like
sketch.
there's more going on as well. On January 25th, 2025, Hindenburg Research released an extensive report titled Carvana, a father-son accounting grift for the ages. The report detailed that in Q3 2024, Carvana reported $3,497 in retail gross profit per unit. Carvana inflates this key metric by 34.5% by dumping an estimated $390 million of selling costs into CG&A annually.
What is
in
that?
stark contrast to accounting practices at competitors. That's a
What is CG&A?
lot of technical
Or SG&A? Selling, general, and administrative expenses includes all non-production. Hold on. Selling, general, and administrative expenses includes all non-production expenses incurred by a company in any given period. It includes expenses such as rent, advertising, marketing. Okay, so it said that they were doing what?
An estimated $390 million of selling costs into CG&A annually, in stark contrast to accounting practices at competitors. That's a lot of technical jargon, but what it's saying is damning. They were allegedly moving around the costs of each car sold elsewhere into a $390 million general bucket. This allegedly made the profit calculation of each sale look much, much better.
Yeah,
so
that makes
investors
sense.
think Carvana is more profitable than it actually is. But it gets worse. Remember those bundles of car loans from earlier? Well, reportedly, Carvana sold $800 million of these loans to a secret party affiliated with Ernest Garcia II, but they never disclosed that to investors or the SEC. Carvana was essentially making a deal with itself to inflate its financials because the sale of these loans looked good. The report ended by saying, "We think the Garcias will leave shareholders with nothing. The company has pushed off creditors and engaged in accounting games while the CEO's father dumps billions in stock." After the report, headlines all over the world picked up on it, and Carvana's share price dropped 13% in just 2 days.
This is what we saw.
On it, and Carvana share.
This is what we saw. That way, when was that? January 2nd of 2015. January. Did I say 2015? I think I meant 2025. Yeah, right here. It went from $260 to $170. Went down $90 a share almost. But then a month later went back up to 285, then dropped down to 211, and then went back up to 327. Massive sell-off soon? Question mark.
Price dropped 13% in just 2 days. Carvana naturally called the report intentionally misleading and inaccurate, but
as people do,
people aren't quite convinced. Law firm Hagens Berman opened an investigation into Carvana to find potential violations of accounting and SEC regulations, but it's too early to tell. Nothing too dramatic has happened to Carvana, aside from the seemingly huge pump and dump with the stock. But
it does kind of
I'll
feel
be
like that.
watching
It's a
closely.
pump and dump.
The company is extremely strange. Carvana feels like less of a public company and more of the Garcia dynasty, a money-making machine for them, potentially an illegal one at that. There was even more I couldn't get into this video, like their repair shop sending duplicated invoices for car repairs, or how the Garcias are also behind the drive time empire, which isn't known for the best things either. We'll
I
have
don't
to
know what
wait
that
and
is.
see how this unfolds, as only time will tell. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.
Really good video. That's kind of a lot to leave off of at the end. I feel like he did that intentionally. Left off on that on the end, so then you can come back to it and be like, "Oh, okay. here's our pickoff point from, episode 1 of this, and this is what's continuing to happen with Carvana. Good video. Ooh. This is a good channel. Hold on. Wait, I didn't get to like the last one. Oh, I did. This is a really, really good channel. One more? How long is this? 20 minutes? Let's see. Do we have enough time for one more? I think I can do one more. One more. Okay, what do we want to do? The downfall of Southwest. I actually care more about this sprint one, to be honest. Oh, we never read the comments. I decline. Oh, this was Zillow. Hold on.
Carvana has.
Hold on. Interesting. If you owe the bank 10 grand, you have a problem. If you owe the bank 9 billion, the bank has a problem. Facts. I can't believe a used car chain would be so honest. What are all the memes about used car salesmen? I mean, no, hey, no shade in the chat. I'm just saying, there's a lot of memes about them. I sold a car 6K. I sold a 6K car to them for 10K. That was due to major repairs, and they didn't even bother to inspect it. All they did was make sure that it turned on. Instantly knew the company wasn't going to last. 2005, you wouldn't download a car. 2025, but you can buy one from a vending machine. Also, in all honesty, I think people would, in fact, download a car if they could. Maybe 3D print it. Okay, here's one. Interesting. I suppose I'm partly to blame. As a car dealer, I took advantage of Carvana's ridiculous purchase program. It happened by accident. A customer came in to purchase a new car, and after we appraised her trade-in and offered her 18.5, she stated that Carvana had offered her nearly 23, and that they wouldn't even send a truck, excuse me, that they would send a truck to pick it up. After looking at their paperwork, I started selling Carvana every car I could to get my hands on, hundreds of them. Instead of asking me what I wanted for the car, they would simply make an offer, and that offer was always thousands of dollars more than what I could have accepted. I knew then it would only be a matter of time. But this is the thing, right? I knew then it would only be a matter of time. That guy's smart. Straight up. That guy's smart. It's shady, but that guy's smart. He is. I wonder how many used car dealerships were doing this. I gotta offload this inventory. Let me buy it, and then I'll offload it. Sold them my car because of the convenience. It was in good shape. When they came to pick it up, they checked absolutely nothing and hauled it off. Cash was deposited a couple days later. I will never buy a car from them. I never understood the car vending machine. I would want to test drive the car before buying it. The vending machine was a huge turnoff. 100%. This is true. Priceless, what's up? What am I doing? I'm just doing some reactions. I just watched a Carvana video, and I'm gonna do a video on the telecom company Sprint here in a minute. This is actually like hugely entertaining for me. And normally I would just watch YouTube on my couch with my dog and react, and but I'm just like, why not do it on stream? So I'm doing that today. See, but this is a reflection of the car buying process in general. Going into a dealership to buy a car is a horrible experience. But I think there's two parts here. This is a reflection of the car buying process in general. I think that you as the buyer have to do the due diligence on a car. If the place is not offering a Carfax for free, don't buy from them. Simple as that, right? Like that alone. If they're not offering you the Carfax for free to look at it, do not buy from them. That is like red flag number one. Number two is I think you always ask them to do a review of the car, or ask them if you can take the car for a day and go to another mechanic to have them do an assessment of the car. If they say no, don't buy from them. Simple as that. Costs you a couple $100, but what is $300 to $500 in security versus $3,000 in repairs later? Nothing. They sold a flood damaged Dodge Dart to my sister without disclosing it. The damage was only discovered during mechanic inspection after near fatal brake failure. There was no real compensation. They just took the car back and gave her a small discount on another. Well, I mean, they did compensate her. They took the car back. I mean, this was shady, but to be in all honesty, this is what I just said. Like, you have to do due diligence as the buyer. What they're saying is not necessarily illegal. You're just not doing enough work. True, because something wrong could be, yeah, something could absolutely be wrong with the car. Like this right here. Like, it's your job as the consumer to do due diligence for yourself, and it's okay to say no. That's one thing I'm continuing to learn. Like, just say no. I'm not doing this. You know, like I went and drove a truck because I was getting some work done on mine, and I was like, ooh, I'm gonna walk around the lot because that's a fun thing to do. And I took a truck for a test drive because I wanted to see what the new model felt like, the 2022 model. Again, it's 2025 now, but I kind of like buying a 3-year-old vehicle. It's a good gap, good gap. And I took it for a drive, and they're like, "Oh, it's a certified pre-owned. We've done all the things, etc." And I was like, "It's not aligned properly." And the steering wheel, like the logo, was shifted on the steering wheel as I was driving straight down the interstate. And I'm like, "You need to. I'm not buying this car." You know, like just that alone, right? Um, here's one more thing, and then we'll move to the next video, and then we'll sign off for the day. One more video after this. Worked for Carvana / Drive Time for 5 years. I was in the refurbished department. You would be appalled at how much glue we used instead of actually doing repairs on it. I would never recommend anyone to buy from them. Yeah, simple as that. Simple as that. This is a really good channel, y'all. This is a real logically answered, really, really good channel. Help them get over a million. 722, and then help me as well. If you can like and subscribe on this video, just helps. I think we're gonna go through their whole repertoire. What do they got here? How many videos? And you had over 1,000 videos. Look at all this. I love watching this stuff. Like right here, the 1.7 trillion car loan debt crisis. What happened? People think it's okay to spend $1,000 a month on a car. That's what happened. Simple as that. That's ridiculous. It's not okay.
Back in the 2000s.
All right. This next video is Sprint. If you're in the US, you're familiar with Sprint at least. I think that was the Can You Hear Me Now? Or was it Verizon and then they memed on each other? It was one of the two. If you're not familiar in the US, Sprint was one of the biggest telecom companies, and they merged with T-Mobile. They got bought out. For the longest time, 3 telecom giants ruled the American market: AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint. True, these 3 were able to get away with the most outrageous anti-consumer policies and predatory contracts because there was no competition. Facts. But this changed in the early 2010s when T-Mobile got a new leader. John Legere, I think that's pronounced. John was determined to redefine how the telecom industry worked by eliminating contracts, hidden fees, and predatory pricing. He's done a good job. Done a really good job. That's who I have. I had to check. That's who I have, T-Mobile. AT&T and Verizon kept up as much as they could and largely came out unharmed, but Sprint took the blunt of the force. Well, Sprint was always kind of like the cousin, you know? Like it's like AT&T and Verizon were like twins, and they were just like, "Oh, if we have something to blame, let's blame it on our cousin who we're hanging out with every once in a while." I mean, that's exactly what it was. From trying to acquire T-Mobile themselves, Sprint ended up getting acquired by T-Mobile as they couldn't sustain their business despite tens of millions of paying users. This video tells the story of the tragic fall of Sprint and how they lost it all. Yeah, I'll be honest, like I had Sprint. I rolled my plan from Sprint into T-Mobile. And my service got exponentially better when I did. When they merged over. It was actually amazing. Let's watch this one and we'll sign off for the day.
Back in the 2000s, 3 companies dominated American telecom: AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint. Sprint was a legacy giant and one of the biggest in the world, with as many as 55 million customers. But despite their size, Sprint would lose billions and be driven to the edge of bankruptcy. Sprint would end up being bailed out by T-Mobile, who themselves were fighting against bankruptcy in the early 2010s.
I remember when T-Mobile came around and I had a friend who had T-Mobile and I was like, "What is that?" I remember that. I remember that being like, he's like, "I have no service." and I would meme on him for having no service, bro. But it was like T-Mobile was cheap then, and they were trying to like go into the market, so they were operating at a loss. I remember this. And then like 10 years later, 5 years later, the company he had, he ended up switching to Verizon, but the company he had, I ended up switching to. It's just
But
funny,
while
full circle
T-Mobile
moment.
staged one of the biggest corporate comebacks in history, Sprint would be completely forgotten. How did this happen?
Not forgotten by
Sprint
me though.
had a bigger brand, more customers, and way more money. How did Sprint die?
Ooh, I missed that sound. That sound. Was that the wait? Was that the Sprint logo?
Made many big bets in the wrong places, but there was one that set off a long chain of dominoes, and it was championed by their CEO, Gary Forsey.
Unlucky.
Check this out. I'm going to show you how I afforded this car.
If this video, all these videos have been good, but I usually don't watch the first ad. I usually let it run for a minute, and then I'll watch the corresponding ads if I really like the video to make sure they get paid, 100%.
Solve a problem.
Let's go back just a second.
By their CEO, Gary Forsey. He was trying to solve a problem, the mass exodus of customers. No one was happy with the telecom industry, but Sprint was particularly bad. Forsey had a solution, or at least what he thought was a solution. Sprint was going
I remember this.
With Nextel, a gigantic wireless provider.
Yeah.
They could add new options for customers.
Remember, I don't know if anyone here remembers that, but Nextel had the walkie-talkie function on their phones.
Millions of wireless customers.
I remember that.
And the many government contracts. Telecom and wireless seemed like a great fit, but this was the start of a long and painful road for Sprint. Merging two gigantic companies is always tough. Often one is absorbed into another with one
Nextel
being
was
the more
absorbed.
dominant brand.
Yep.
This happened with AT&T and DirecTV and the HP Compaq mergers. But Sprint was a bit different. They were going to merge equally. Both companies were valued equally and their shareholders each hold approximately 50% of the new company.
Oof.
So, what went wrong? The
struggle for power?
Had a 50-50 split in everything. Management teams, executives, to headquarters, they even tried to merge the two brands together with these.
To me, that seems like leadership is making, like, hedging their bets, or believes too much, like, how do I put this? Let me start over. That's like a disconnect. That's a very clear disconnect from top to bottom of like how things get done, because one, like, you're taking two organizations that potentially have, and most likely have, two different company cultures, and you're like, let's merge. And what you're going to end up having is you're going to having teams that are like, well, just put that on the Sprint team, because you're going to have siloing. You're always going to have siloing. So like, one, as tough it is to say, like, one has to take over the other, and you have to.
The Sprint logo and the Nextel colors. It was an identity crisis and an internal crisis. The two company cultures didn't fit at all, and the merging process was long and painful. Thousands of jobs were cut, and underperforming stores were shut down.
Yeah.
Dan Hess, the Sprint CEO after Forsey, reflected that in 2020 hindsight, the Nextel merger was a bad idea.
Yeah.
This is kind of what you learn in business school.
It wasn't that the merger seemed like a bad idea. I don't know. But I think it just seems how they merged was the problem. One has to swallow the other. Like, if you have two whales and you just tie those two whales together, right? One's going to want to go right and the other one's going to want to go left. One whale's got to swallow the other.
A merger of equal.
That's why there's no two, like, that's why there's one king of the jungle, right? There's not two, and they fight it out for who's the one. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Isn't a good thing. Bloomberg ranked the deal as one of the worst.
You still respect one another. I'm just saying, like,
of the past 5 years.
Yeah.
While AT&T and Verizon were taking ground, Sprint was on internal damage control.
Yeah.
And at this time,
yep.
Forsey was forced out of his role as CEO, replaced by Hess. Yet, even putting the merger problems aside, it had distracted Sprint from a bigger issue. Customers were still leaving.
Their customer service was bad.
Still terrible. In fact,
yeah.
It had gotten worse.
Yeah.
After the merger, Sprint's customer satisfaction rating had dropped to 61.
I remember this. It was dog shit. Their customer service rating was dog shit.
The worst in the industry. Their service was unreliable with dropped calls, incorrect billing, and terrible customer support. This made for a lot of high-maintenance customers who
T-Mobile's though, I will say, like T-Mobile's, I've had nothing but great experience with T-Mobile.
to complain. So
I've never had Verizon or AT&T, so I can't speak to them.
What did Sprint do? Well, they fired them. That's right. Fired their customers. They fired 1,000 customers. They told them, the number of inquiries you have made to us during this time has led us to determine that we are unable to meet your current wireless needs. Generously,
Yikes!
Sprint said it wouldn't charge them the early termination fee, which could often be up to $200. How generous. Naturally,
Hey, you've asked us too many questions because we have shit customer service and kind of a bad product. You gotta go, homie.
this sparked outrage and the media caught on to that quickly. Keep in mind, this was also around the time Sprint was dragged into court over their early cancellation fees and ordered to pay out over $70 million to customers.
Yeah.
We were last in customer satisfaction, last in 2007, 2008, and 2009.
3 years running.
People absolutely hated Sprint.
3 years running, and honestly, like, people will pay. Here's my, okay. If you have a budget, I'm this way. I have a budget. It's amazing when you get everything locked into your budget. It just is. And when you have it locked into your budget, and you're like, well, like my internet provider right now is $20 more per month than the next guy. But it's already locked into my budget. I could go make 20 bucks more a month, but I'm like, I've called. They've had great customer satisfaction. It's already in my budget. $20 more a month. Like, I'm not going to sweat over that $20 a month. People are going to look at this the exact same way. They're going to say, okay, I have a phone provider. It's in my budget. I'm not overspending. Like, I've already got everything categorized. So I can now afford, because I've set myself up for success, I can now afford to be like, well, when I need customer service, I want good customer service. This $20 a month pays for that. Like, if you provide it, there are people that will pay for it. And Sprint is a perfect reason, an example. 2007, 2008, 2009, people had baked this in like, I'm not going to Sprint, bro. I'm paying 20 bucks more a month, but like it's in my budget. I'm not concerned about the $20 payment making that change, right? Like, good financial management and good stewardship of your money gives you the flexibility to be able to make those decisions for yourself. And Sprint is a perfect example of why they failed. Like, you can't have bad customer service and a bad connection like zone, right? Bad offering, and expect to succeed and not get swallowed.
But this was just one of their many problems. Amidst all of this, something else happened. Something would change the trajectory of Sprint forever.
Today, Apple is going to reinvent
Interesting.
the phone.
iPhone
what
did?
we're going to do is get rid of all these buttons.
Wait, was it because Sprint was making a lot of phones? I don't know.
Giant screen. A giant screen.
We all know how the iPhone changed the world, but what
I've got two on my desk right now. I've got my old one which manages the Twitch stream, and I've got my new one which manages the YouTube stream. Absolutely, it changed the world.
What I don't know is Apple made a major deal in the background.
And so we went back and forth for a few months, and we finally settled for a 5-year exclusive deal at AT&T.
Yeah, AT&T
bet big on the iPhone. In my opinion, this was one of
genius. Well, also AT&T is one of the biggest internet providers ever. So like telecom is just a division of them. That's
AT&T's
genius.
Best business moves ever. They secured an exclusive 5-year deal with Apple.
100%.
If you wanted an iPhone, you had to get it through AT&T. Think about how powerful that is in retrospect. It was a huge gamble that paid off big time. Customers began leaving in droves for the iPhone, and this left Sprint in a dangerous position.
Yeah.
They had to react, and
5 years. You have 2000. When did the iPhone come out? When did the iPhone come out? First gen. June 29th, 2007. The first iPhone came out June 29th, 2007. So you're saying that in 2007, The very first year of Sprint having a terrible customer service rate, and then they can't get the new iPhone, which everyone's coming to in droves. The second year, terrible customer service rate, can't get a new iPhone. The third year, terrible customer service rate, can't get a new iPhone. And then I don't know what happened 2010 and 11, but like still can't get a new iPhone on Sprint because it's a 5-year deal with Apple. Like AT&T is genius for that.
Weren't the only ones. Verizon in response went all in on Android with Motorola
Yeah.
and their own Droid brand. Not
Yeah.
as popular as the iPhone, but it was a competitor for sure. You've got to almost put the iPhone, to be fair, in a separate category, Sprint CEO has said.
Yeah,
The
that's
Apple
just
brand
that.
to be fair, in a separate categories.
Yeah, you've got to put the iPhone in a separate category. Of what? Like, look where it's at now. That just means, yeah, you threw, bro.
Sprint CEO has
As modern day would say, you're cooked.
said. The Apple brand and that device has done so well, it's like comparing someone to Michael Jordan. Hess knew Sprint had to respond, but maybe they should have thought about
I didn't let
it
him speak,
a
but
bit more. AT&T offered the iPhone, Verizon offered the Droid, Sprint offered the Palm Pre. If you don't know anything about this phone,
hold on.
I don't blame you. It was a web OS phone, aka a Linux-based
That
phone.
thing
And
is
to be honest, it was
disgusting.
way
I didn't even knew this is the off. That is disgust. And in their advertisement, is that roaming? Are they? Hold on. Is this a Sprint advertisement? Because if it is, and they're showing roaming, that's
ahead
terrible.
of its time.
Can't be.
It allowed for amazing multitasking and felt very intuitive. But unfortunately, being ahead of your time usually means having the restraints of your time. It was quite fragile, with the sliding screen tending to come loose. Not to mention, it had a very small number of apps. Naturally, the Palm Pre didn't take off like Sprint hoped.
Shocker.
But that wasn't even the end of their problems.
This is the premium Garmin Duffel 45 liter.
I like this channel, man. I keep saying it over and over. Logically answered. So good. We're gonna give them another. We'll just give them the rest of the ad time. These 20 seconds, they deserve it. They deserve the cash from it. Give them the ad rev. So good. Eight seconds, y'all. We're just gonna give them the ad rev. They deserve it. We'll only skip when it goes to this screen. Yep, perfect.
Bet on the wrong infrastructure. As a first mover in 4G, they invested in WiMAX, but over time, the industry moved towards another technology, LTE. It had better device compatibility, better coverage, and faster speeds, and soon became the universal standard. Sprint, rushing to be the first in this technology, teamed up with Clearwire to build a 4G network, but they turned out to be an unreliable partner. Much time was wasted, and soon their competitors caught up and chose the right network, LTE. Sometimes being a first mover is crucial, like AT&T and Apple. Other times, it just means you're the first loser, like Sprint. But there was, however, one silver lining in all of this.
It's like bad decision after bad decision. Wait, what's this silver lining?
Had been working tirelessly to improve their customer support and service. I took those numbers every week to the head of network or head of marketing or head of billing, and I said, own that number to get it down. To his credit, that's exactly what happened. In 2007, they were the worst in the industry, but by 2011, they had gradually risen to the top. They were even awarded
wait, what did that say? Because I just flamed them about this earlier. Sprint ranked highest amongst full service providers in JD Power and Associates wireless purchase experience study, and it's high. Okay. So they turned it around. I did flame them just a few minutes ago. Okay. Respect.
Had gradually risen to the top. They were even awarded the most improved US company in overall customer satisfaction across
nice.
industries.
That's actually kind of insane because when AT&T had the iPhone solely, they came back for this. But okay, that begs the question, how many people did they lose to be able to change the percentages? I don't know.
There's still something to keep in mind. Most improved doesn't always mean great. The telecom industry as a whole was hated for their terrible service. Confusing plans, long contracts, terrible cancellation fees.
Yeah.
If you
Sorry, I
compare
didn't mean to pause.
anything to a dumpster fire, it'll look good by comparison. Sprint's customer service wasn't a strength, it was just less of a disaster. Sprint was still losing the war, so they had to make some big plays.
Chapter 2, even worse bets. Oh, how does it get worse? The first chapter was terrible.
After the failure of the Palm Pre, let's just say Sprint was eager to get in on Apple's golden goose.
Why wouldn't they
Dan
be?
Hess reportedly said that the biggest reason people leave Sprint is because it doesn't sell the iPhone.
Right.
So
that's what I just said a minute ago. You lost out on 5 years.
finally being able to support the iPhone after 5 years was a major win for Sprint, but it came with a huge cost. In 2011, the two companies made a deal. We don't know exactly what went down, but Sprint agreed to spend $20 billion on iPhones over 4 years. $20 billion. When shareholders heard about this, they were furious. The company's already tightening profit margins had suddenly fell off a cliff thanks to this deal. So
wow.
Dan Hess took a pay cut and gave back performance payments he received earlier, which together passed $3 million.
Hey, respect to Hess. He took a pay cut and gave back his performance bonuses. That's respect, honestly. That's someone who tends to care about their employees. I really respect that, actually.
They now have
I don't know
the
him as a
iPhone,
person, but I respect
there
that
was
move.
Still the issue of 4G. Sprint had to catch up, and unfortunately, that didn't mean WiMAX. But
well, because I remember what Sprint made a deal. I think Sprint made a deal with AT&T and Verizon to be their on their network, but as secondary. So if you were a Verizon customer, AT&T customer, you got priority. But if you had Sprint and there was enough bandwidth, you could join that tower. But the moment more people signed on or were in need for Verizon or AT&T, you took the brunt of that. And it's still how it works today, right? Like these towers get contracted out to other vendors. That's why you see cheaper vendors. I can't remember what's the vendor at. There's one that like Ryan Reynolds has. Is it Cricket? Is that the same one? Like they don't have, at least to my understanding, I don't think they have their own towers. I think they contract tower usage from other vendors, and that's how they're just kind of like a middleman.
if they weren't bad enough already, things were about to get much worse for Sprint. The industry was about to see what real customer service was, but it wasn't from Sprint.
The industry wants you to be confused. They want the way you purchase to be tough. How about this stat? 46% of Americans say they have gone in and made a wireless decision and gone home and regretted it.
Oh yeah.
This is a higher remorse
It's like buying a car.
by a factor of 33% than the used car industry.
T-Mobile's new CEO.
I'm on it today. This is my area. 100%. I love this shit. Look at that. Just compare that to the car. He even said it was higher than the car industry.
John Ledger had to come out swinging with their new un-carrier strategy. No long-term contracts, no cancellation fees.
I will say this though. Going into a brick and mortar is the worst. If you have a plan and you like your cell plan, just go if you can afford it. I mean, they even do monthly payments now. Go to Samsung, go to Apple, go to wherever. If their phone supports a virtual oh my god, what's it called? What's it called, chat? SIM. If your phone supports a virtual SIM, they can convert a physical to a virtual. You never have to go back into a brick and mortar. You can just keep the same plan you have. You can even do the payment schedule through the phone company. You never have to go back into a brick and mortar for one of these places. Honestly, like if I can, I will continue to just roll my plan into the new phone when I want the phone by going directly to the source for the phone.
Plans good customer service. T-Mobile was in last place of the four and most assumed they were done for. But unlike Sprint, T-Mobile was undergoing a true revolution which allowed them to quickly make up ground.
Yeah.
Sprint needed to act fast. They began a massive operation to overhaul their infrastructure to catch up.
I think T-Mobile now has they surpassed Verizon on the biggest coverage. They have the most coverage around the United States. Pretty sure.
LTE 4G. They aimed to cover 250 million points of presence with their new network by the end of 2013. To help, Sprint also shut down the Nextel iDen network. Despite spending billions on the merger,
I wonder if that iDen was how they did the walkie-talkie.
the technology was now old and losing customers.
Game of Thrones King's Road is now available.
All right, we're gonna give them 10 seconds on this ad. I've gotta wrap up soon, so y'all really should check out this video.
It was still a
Just
vital
channel.
network for businesses and first responders, so this shutdown stung particularly hard. Nextel went dark overnight.
Yeah.
But from Sprint's point of view, it was a necessary evil. They needed the company to boost its new 4G LTE network, which was where the real business was, and their competitors were already well ahead of them. But things weren't going as planned. The replacement and rollout was going much slower than expected. But why? A 4G LTE network uses fiber optic cables to create a backhaul infrastructure. But Sprint didn't have enough fiber cables to build such a massive network across the US. Their competitors had invested in fiber over the past few years, but Sprint hadn't. T-Mobile had actually laid this groundwork.
But Sprint hadn't done this because, well, I don't know if this is 100% true, but this is my outside perspective looking in. Sprint didn't do this because they were looking at WiMAX, which you can see up here on the screen, with Nextel, and like Nextel and Sprint were still 50-50. So if you have one person thinking to go this way, one person thinking this way, you never actually go forward.
Years in advance by adding in fiber backhaul to another network before it became LTE. We knew it would be difficult, but it was even more difficult than any of us had anticipated. Unfortunately, there was no playbook. No wireless company in the world had done something so radical and so aggressive in order to build a great network in the end. Sprint's head of network development said, if there was a silver bullet, we would have found one. We all would like this to go faster.
Right.
Soon, Sprint scaled their goal down to 200 million points of presence.
With Sprint, you don't get charged extra, you don't slow down, and you get unlimited data, text, and calling to any
Oh, I don't think that's true.
$79.99. The best unlimited plan wins.
Wait, who is that? Who is that? What's that voice? Who sings this? What's his name? What's his name? I'm on a boat. What's his name? Lonely Island. What's his name? Andy Samberg. That's Andy Samberg's voice.
LTE soon began rolling out, but it was riddled with issues.
Hold on.
Plan wins. T-Mobile for only $79.99.
Yep.
The best unlimited plan wins.
Yep.
LTE soon began rolling out, but it was riddled with issues for customers. Some on the network just had no data available, or bad coverage due to their lackluster backhaul.
I remember this.
During this phase of rip and replace, their customer reputation they worked so hard to rebuild was
I remember this.
Once again.
I remember going into the store. And you couldn't replicate the issue because at the store, they still do this. It's genius. But at the store, they host a server hub spot. And so when you go into the store, even if you walk outside the store and drive a mile down the road, you get no service. If you go into the store, they're like, "Oh, you have full bars," because they're pushing that network connectivity out in the store itself. I remember this. I remember going to Sprint and being like, "I'm having all these issues," and like you could never replicate at the mechanic. You know, you just never could.
Lights were falling, their customers were leaving, the Sprint ship was sinking. But then Sprint was thrown a lifeline. In 2013, the Japanese giant SoftBank acquired Sprint for $21.6 billion. They now had a cash injection and deeper pockets to catch up to their rivals, but they were now also under the leadership of SoftBank's famous CEO and billionaire, Masayoshi Son. He had big
I never knew
plans
this.
for Sprint, but in retrospect, they might not have been the best for the company.
All right, chapter 3. What we got? A bad lifeline.
Masayoshi
This is just L. Each chapter is a continuous series of L's for Sprint. I never knew it was this bad. I knew it was bad, but never this bad.
On one thing. He saw one way to overcome Sprint's recent failures and weaknesses. merge with T-Mobile. In some ways, it did make sense. The third and fourth biggest teaming up would make it far easier to build a full 4G and soon 5G network.
100%.
But there was a mountain of issues. The US
What is that? What is that?
government had kept a close eye on the telecom industry. With only 4 real players, fears of poor competition were high, especially with the previous terrible contracts and conditions for customers.
Yeah.
In fact, they had just blocked AT&T from acquiring T-Mobile.
Yeah.
Sprint's leadership team
But that's because AT&T is too big. AT&T is massive. People forget that AT&T like runs the infrastructure. People forget that AT&T has agreements with the NSA. Like AT&T's massive. So of course they blocked it. But Sprint was just like I said, AT&T and Verizon were like twins who were always, lockstep, and then Sprint was like their cousin that whenever they hung out, they just blamed the shit on Sprint. That's exactly what they did.
It was the wrong move, or at least the wrong move right now, and it wasn't just Sprint's leadership. As Masayoshi Son marched ahead, T-Mobile's parent company, Deutsche Telekom, said the exact same thing, having just experienced a terrible forced breakup between their subsidiary and AT&T. Now wasn't the right time. A former high-ranking Sprint executive explained that our government affairs team made it very clear at the time that it was the wrong move. It never occurred to us that he would not listen. Masayoshi Son was going to get the merger approved one way or another, and to do so, he would win over FCC chairman Tom Wheeler. Sprint executives with no alternative reluctantly followed. They suggested he attend a meeting with Wheeler later in the year, and slowly warm him up to the idea of the merger, then get the approval to buy T-Mobile.
Yeah.
But Masayoshi Son was impatient. Instead, he scheduled a meeting right away with the FCC chairman in DC. Insiders say that during the meeting, Wheeler was understandably hesitant.
Well, yeah, that's like meeting someone for the first time, and instead of being like, "Hi, my name is Brock. I do some Twitch streaming," or sorry, I did this backwards. "Hi, my name is Brock. Like, how are you? What do you do for your life? What's life?" It's like, "Hi, I'm Brock. I'm Twitch streaming. Follow me." And it's like, it's not like you're getting 1 or 2 seconds on a short. It's like you're shaking someone's hand and you're like, "Let me buy my shit. Invest in me." Like, you're going right to business. People want to have some type of human-to-human interaction, even if they don't feel like they want to, they do. It just makes the most sense.
They just did all this analysis about the AT&T T-Mobile.
That's why React content is so big right now. Like, people get so much in their own headspace too about like how they think, etc. At least I do. Like, they want to see how someone else responds to it. If they're similar, they disagree, have some discourse around it, and make it more personable. Everything comes down to being more personable.
Merger, and unless things have changed in a year, the analysis would be the same. Wheeler was just trying to be helpful. Then Masayoshi Son's true colors came out. He began to argue in a way that wasn't helpful. You could see Masa digging himself into a hole. It was not well played. Wheeler, however, didn't relent. Then Son pushed the case to US senators for months, but none of them would budge. So in August of 2014, he gave up on his pursuit of T-Mobile. This was a huge problem. Sprint had spent valuable executive time that they didn't have.
Yeah, every step of the way through all of these chapters, Sprint executives wasted their time. They wasted their time in chapter 1 with Nextel because instead of just swallowing them whole and then making a decisive decision going forward, they said, let's just be partners in this together, and let's just say, oh, going forward, like, you make half of the decisions, I make half the decisions. The siloing, the breakdown, like I said earlier, if you've got 2 whales connected to each other, which is what Nextel and Sprint were, and one wants to go one way and one wants to go the other, you're never going forward. So then AT&T and Verizon, they surpassed Sprint even further. That gap, like AT&T and Verizon were always here, and then Sprint was here. That gap just like increasingly over time just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And like you saw that in chapter 2 as well, and now you're seeing that again here. Like, it just
Sprint was continuing to lose customers and still hadn't solved the problem.
Yeah, because I think chapter 2 is all about the customer service and how AT&T and AT&T had a 5-year deal on the iPhone, and Verizon went into Android to mitigate that 5-year deal. 100%.
Had also plummeted
Hold on, let me go
for
back.
most customers and still hadn't solved the problem. Their stock had also plummeted from $53 in 2005 to just $11.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, y'all.
They were
Really
losing
helps me.
$3.3 billion every year. After the merger failure, Sun admitted, I was thinking to myself, I made one of the biggest mistakes in my life, which was the misjudgment of the US regulatory environment. We still have the customers, we still have employees, so I have to take care.
Yeah.
He tried to acquire his way out of problems.
His whole time was spent on the acquisition. Never anything for development going forward.
But that didn't work.
And the acquisition ended up being the solution, just he got acquired rather than acquiring.
He had to face them. To ease concerns, Masayoshi Son made an unexpected appearance at Sprint's earnings call. He told investors he remains committed to the historical turnaround at Sprint and doesn't intend to sell it. In August 2014, Dan Hess was replaced as CEO by Marcelo Clore, an entrepreneur but with no carrier experience. Regardless, he was about to take some bold steps. So, what was his big plan?
Hey, I'm Paul, and I used to ask if you could hear me now with Verizon.
Oh,
Not anymore.
This is what it was. Verizon had it first, and then Sprint meaned on Verizon.
I'm with Sprint now, because guess what? It's 2016, and every network is great.
Sorry.
In fact, Sprint's reliability is now within 1% of Verizon, and Sprint saves you 50% on most Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile rates. So I switched to Sprint, and millions more have too. Can you hear that?
Don't let a 1% difference cost you twice as much.
Yeah, but what's 1%? 1% is still big. Depends. What's the comparison?
Switch to Sprint today.
Sprint's new campaign essentially boiled down to almost as good, within 1%, but
I mean, it still was a really good marketing campaign.
Much cheaper. Half as much as
I think that rocked, like, this was before, like, social media was still huge. I think that rocked. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, did you see this?
In fact. They had a spectrum that was underused, so they could afford to offer unlimited plans. You have to play your assets to your advantage, Clore said. Our number one asset is our spectrum. And in the short term, it worked. Sprint saw the biggest leap in new monthly customers in 9 years.
Wow.
Their stock price jumped 70%. The message is simple. We are back in the game. We are going to offer the most competitive value for American consumers. But this was a short-term solution. Price cutting is good, but it usually means something else. Cost cutting.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, Sprint was slashing costs left and right. They began relocating radio towers from private property to government locations, which were much cheaper. In truth, despite more customers, they were still losing money.
But if you relocate that from private property to government locations, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's good government locations. Some private property may be the best spots for it to get better customers. I don't know. I don't actually know that.
They plan to cut expenses by as much as $2.5 billion in fiscal 2016 to end 6 straight years of losses.
Oh.
Nothing was off the table either.
6 straight years of L's. And you know what's crazy is that's just 6 straight years of losses financially, taking them back to 2010. During that time frame from 2007 to 2012, they had 2007 to 2010, they had the worst customer service reputation. So that's 9 straight years of just L over L over L. Like, that's insane.
Expenses, labor costs, admin expenses, anything and everything. We'll go after everything, including snacks and yogurt cups for employees, said their CFO. Instead of investing in better towers, they begin rolling out magic boxes to improve 4G in customers' homes.
Yeah, this is still a thing. I think, like 90% sure. Like if you have, I think if you have like good internet, but you're out in like the middle of nowhere, which now you can, now with Starlink you can really have. But like I think if you had were in like a bad spot but still had good internet, you can still get these boxes from T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, Sprint. I think just the main difference now is like now you have voice over IP, so it doesn't necessarily matter, especially with Wi-Fi. But this was like this was actually like Sprint ahead of the time again. Just they rolled out physical devices when really like they really just need to wait for voice over IP. I don't know, maybe it had already come out, but like I think you can still get these, but they're not like a hot commodity.
Enough. In 2015,
think of like think of paying for your phone service. Think of paying for internet at home, and then think of paying, oh well, for my phone service I need a hotspot. That's like what this is.
They dropped to 4th place as T-Mobile surpassed them. They
Yeah.
also needed to cut costs elsewhere to invest in their network, but they still didn't have enough cash. In 2017, I believe we invested 1.3 billion on our network, while our competitors were investing 6, 7, 8, 9, 10
6 or 10xing the investments on network. That is failing.
$1 billion. The quality of our network was 4 times worse than Verizon's, half of T-Mobile's, and even below AT&T.
And think, this was 10 years prior. T-Mobile was about to go under.
Then once again came Masayoshi Son. He soon turned back to T-Mobile for a merger. Can't teach an old dog new tricks.
This time other way around, right?
This time it was different.
Yeah.
Beforehand, Sprint was the bigger player, but now T-Mobile was in the position of power.
Yeah.
When they began talks in 2017, T-Mobile made one thing clear. Their parent company, Deutsche Telekom, would hold the power. This was a huge blow to Son's pride. Initially, this was a deal breaker as he wanted to control the combined company, but eventually Son relented. The merger went ahead, and despite several states filing to block it, the merger was approved, primarily because things were so bad at Sprint that the government didn't even see them as a competitor.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think this was good. I'm glad it didn't get blocked. Because now look at how big T-Mobile is, and things have kind of flip-flopped up a little bit.
Herrera, who allowed the merger, stated,
at least in telecom
it is
world,
likely to substantially lessen competition.
Yeah.
And that Sprint does not have a sustainable long-term competitive strategy to remain a viable competitor. Sprint merged with T-Mobile for $26 billion in 2020, and the Sprint name was retired for good. Sprint had a bad network and missed out big with the iPhone, but that's not why they died. T-Mobile was in the same boat, arguably in a much worse boat than Sprint. It was the decisions and leadership that set one company apart and drove another into the ground. Sprint kept looking for quick, short-term solutions, while T-Mobile looked internally at what was fundamentally wrong with the entire industry and how they could best serve their customers. SoftBank might have briefly saved Sprint, but in reality, they only prolonged the inevitable. If you'd like to learn about how T-Mobile handled the same situation but came out on top, check out this video. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys.
Yeah. That was really good. That was really good. I'm going to mute it and let the ads play at the end for them. That was really good. I was going to say Sprint just didn't play the long game. You got to play the long game. 100%. Like, that quick fixes in life never end up actually paying out. I just think that's hilarious. That that is just L over L over L for 9 years straight. And they just kind of limped themselves along. And finally were like, please, somebody just buy us, bro. We got to get out of here. All right, y'all. That's it for me today. Longer stream than I anticipated, to be honest. Oh, I'm not going to skip. Hold on. I'll wait till this to end. So make sure they get their money. Yeah, this will be a good one for next time. I think I'm just going to leave this up on my monitor for tomorrow's stream, and we can start that. This is a really, really good channel. Seriously. Really good channel. Logically answered. Weekly uploads. Very, very, very good. I'm probably going to start going through some of these and reacting, because these are incredible. A&D will be good. I'm curious about the Snapchat one. And the Sprint one was really good. I've liked every single one so far. These have been phenomenal. Definitely worth checking out their channel, and I definitely recommend them. All right, y'all. That's it for me today. I've got to go. We have a stream tomorrow. I'll be on. Probably doing the same. Do some React content. Probably post this on YouTube as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll just help grow the channel so much. We already, this stream alone with React, we went up 6 subs, which is actually huge for as small of a channel I am. So as any help you can do, that I'd be really appreciative. Until next time, y'all, Have a good rest of your day. Enjoy it, and we'll upload these later. Peace out.